Greetings, Lore Masters. Tonight, our chronicle covers the magical arts that sit gathering dust in the spell tomes of Winterhold, ignored by the archmages and the battle-hardened dragonborns alike. We are looking at the unsung heroes of the Arcane, the spells that don't necessarily blow up a mountain, but might just save your life when you're 3 levels deep in a Dwemer ruin with no potions and a broken iron sword. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a frozen cliff in the Pale, the wind howling like a wounded mammoth, staring down into a valley obscured by blinding snow. You know there is power there, hidden in the Eyster, but the path is gone. Let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive a trip to Coldharbour without some serious enchanted gear, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. If you are listening from a cozy bed in Rift, or perhaps a late-night study session in Cyrodiil, let me know your location and local time in the comments. It's always comforting to know we aren't travelling alone. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Dragonborn trudges through the damp, moss-slicked stones of Embershire Mine. It is the first real test for many adventurers, a hole in the earth infested with bandits who care more about iron ore than the sanctity of life. The air smells of rust and stale sweat. It is here, often on a crudely made table near a bedroll, that the novice finds a tome bound in rough leather. It isn't a spell of destruction that turns blood to ice, nor a conjuration that rips a Daedra from the chaotic creature of oblivion. It is a simple illusion spell, often cast aside as a novelty for those who cannot read a map. It is clairvoyance. In the grand library of the College of Winterhold, scholars often debate the nature of illusion magic. Is it merely trickery? Is it the bending of light and sound to fool the senses? Or is it something deeper, a manipulation of the victim's own mind? Clairvoyance posits a different question entirely. Can you cast an illusion on yourself to reveal the truth? When the Dragonborn raises a hand, wreathed in the soft violet hue of the illusion school, a ribbon of ethereal blue light snakes out from their palm. It does not burn, it does not freeze, it simply guides. It flows over the uneven flagstones, and winds up the wooden ramps, and cuts through the darkness of the labyrinth, unerringly pointing toward the current objective. For the veteran adventurer, the map is a trusted friend. They know the distinct U-shape of Bleakfall's Barrow or the spiralling descent of Sarthal. But for the weary, the exhausted, or the immersive traveller who refuses to toggle a glowing arrow above their head, clairvoyance is the blue ribbon of fate. It is the magical manifestation of intuition. Think of the sheer scale of Blackreach. That subterranean cavern is a nightmare of bioluminescent fungi and farmer architecture, a place where direction loses all meaning. The ceiling is so high it has its own weather system, and the shadows hide Chaurus Reapers waiting to skitter over your boots. Navigating Blackreach without the map is a descent into madness. Here, clairvoyance becomes less of a spell and more of a divine lifeline. You cast it, watching your magicka bar slowly drain, a constant reminder that knowledge has a price. And the blue smoke trails off the edge of a Dwemer bridge, indicating a path you hadn't even seen. It encourages a slower pace. You cannot sprint while channeling the spell. You must walk. You must follow the thread of magic like Theseus in the Minotaur's maze, trusting that the spell knows better than you do. There is a fascinating mechanical quirk to this spell that serves as our core in-game fact for the evening. Clairvoyance doesn't just point to the exit, it pathfinds to the specific objective marker active in your journal. If you have multiple quests active, it prioritizes the one you have focused. This sounds simple, almost like a magical GPS, but the implications are staggering. The spell is essentially reading the Dragonborn's intent, interfacing with the very fabric of destiny, or the quest log, if we are breaking the fourth wall, and physically drawing a line across the world. It is the only spell in the game that interacts directly with the player's UI objectives in a diegetic way. It bridges the gap between the game mechanics and the lore, suggesting that the hero isn't just wandering, they are being pulled by fate. However, fate can be fickle. We have all experienced the gentle sarcasm of the game engine when using this spell. You stand in a room with a locked door, cast clairvoyance, and the blue ribbon happily smacks directly into the wood, swirling into a little pool of "you can't go this way, idiot." It doesn't unlock doors, it doesn't warn you of traps. It is purely directional. It will gladly lead you over a pressure plate that triggers a swinging spike wall if that pressure plate happens to be on the shortest route to your destination. It is an impartial guide. It tells you where to go, not how to survive the trip. There is a quiet beauty in that limitation. It forces the adventurer to remain present. You follow the light, but you watch the shadows. The spell costs magicka per second to maintain, creating a rhythmic ebb and flow to exploration. You cast to find your bearing, release to conserve energy, walk a bit, then cast again. It creates a heartbeat to the dungeon delve. Cast, breathe, walk, cast, breathe, walk. It is almost meditative, a stark contrast to the chaotic flailing of combat. Deep in the obscure lore of the Illusion School, specifically referenced in the research notes of the Master Wizard Drevis Nelleran, there is a suggestion that high-level illusion isn't just about fooling the eyes, but about altering reality itself. If you can convince the world that you are invisible, you are invisible. Does clairvoyance work on a similar principle? Is the caster convincing the world to reveal the path of least resistance? Or are they tapping into the dreams leave, the metaphysical internet of the Elder Scrolls universe, to download the schematics of the dungeon in real time? Community debates have raged for years about the utility of this spell. The min-maxers, those adventurers who calculate damage per second to the decimal point and craft iron daggers by the thousands, dismiss clairvoyance as useless garbage. Why waste a hand slotting magicka on a path when you can just look at the map? They argue it is a noob trap, a spell designed for people who can't navigate. But the role players, the lore walkers, defend it with zealous passion. They argue that opening a map screen breaks the immersion, snaps you out of the fantasy. Watching the blue trail creates a connection to the world. It feels magical. It feels like you are a wizard divining your way through the dark, not a gamer looking at a grid. And let's not forget the glitches. Oh, the glitches. Sometimes the blue ribbon decides that the best way to get to the Greybeards is to walk straight up a 90-degree mountain face. It will point you toward a sheer cliff and insist with glowing blue confidence that you should just start climbing. It's moments like these where the spell feels less like a divine guide and more like a prankster spirit, perhaps a minor Daedra of inconvenience, giggling as you try to jump spam your way up the throat of the world because the magic line said so. But when it works, it is sublime. Imagine the labyrinth of Labyrinthian, a place specifically designed to confuse and kill mages. The walls shift in the firelight. The Draugr moan from the alcoves. You're low on health, your torches have burned out, and you have lost your sense of direction entirely. Panic sets in. The darkness feels heavy, pressing against your chest. You equip that simple novice spell. The violet aura flares. The blue ribbon cuts through the gloom, pointing toward a narrow crack in the wall you missed 3 times. The relief is palpable. It is a small magic, yes. It won't slay a dragon. But in that moment, it is the most powerful spell in your arsenal because it gives you hope. It tells you that there is a way forward. The spell also serves as a fantastic training tool for the budding illusionist. Because it is a continuous cast or concentration spell, it levels the illusion skill rapidly if used constantly. One could argue that an adventurer who walks from Solitude to Riften with their hand raised, following the blue ribbon the entire way, would arrive as a master of the mind. They might look ridiculous to the passing guards, a wizard staring intently at a smoke trail while walking into a vegetable cart, but they are honing their craft. They are learning to impose their will on the environment. It is easy to overlook the quiet spells. In a land defined by the Thuum, the shouts that shatter the sky, clairvoyance is a whisper. It is the softest of magics. It requires no target, inflicts no pain, and offers no protection. It simply is. It exists to serve the traveller, and in the vast, dangerous, and often confusing province of Skyrim, service is a rare commodity. As the Dragonborn follows the trail deep into the bowels of the earth, the blue light reflects off the ancient Nordic carvings, illuminating the faces of kings long dead. The path winds down, ever down into the dark. The spell flickers and fades as the magicka pool runs dry, leaving the adventurer in the dark once more. But the direction is known now. The fear of the unknown has been pushed back, if only for a few yards. We move now from the magic of finding our way to the magic of surviving what we find. Because finding the boss room is only half the battle. Surviving the fireball that greets you upon entry is the other. The blue ribbon fades, and the Dragonborn sheathes the spell, swapping it for something with a bit more substance. The air grows colder, and the sound of chanting drifts from the chamber ahead. Navigation is over, combat is imminent. The air in the chamber shifts instantly from the stale damp of the mine to the electric tang of ozone. The Dragonborn rounds the corner, and there, standing atop a wooden dais like a chaotic conductor, is a bandit outlaw channeling a stream of frost. The instinct is to dodge, to roll, to scramble behind a crate of stolen mead. But the seasoned adventurer, the one who has listened to the lectures of Tolfdir while trying not to fall asleep, knows there is another way. They do not run. They raise a hand, palm outward, fingers splayed as if catching a ball. A shimmering, translucent semicircle of white light erupts into existence. It hums with a low, unstable frequency, like a trapped bee in a glass jar. This is the Lesser Ward. It is the lowest tier of defensive magic in the School of Restoration, often unlocked early and then immediately forgotten in favour of simply hitting things harder. Most travellers look at the stats, a measly 40 points of armour rating and the ability to negate up to 40 points of spell damage, and scoff. A bandit's steel warhammer deals far more than that. A giant's club will smash through a lesser ward as if it were made of spun sugar, likely taking the caster's arm and dignity with it. So, the spell is discarded. It sits in the magic menu, gathering digital dust, overshadowed by fast healing or the seductive allure of fireball. But to dismiss the lesser ward is to misunderstand the fundamental physics of the Orbis. Let's go back to that bandit. He unleashes his frostbite spell, a continuous stream of supercooled air designed to slow your muscles and sap your stamina. It hits the ward. Instead of freezing your skin or slowing your movement, the frost simply vanishes. It strikes the curvature of the magical shield and dissipates into harmless mist. The ward flares, drinking the magicka of the incoming attack. You walk forward, unbothered, like a parent walking through a toddler's splash fight with an umbrella. The bandit's eyes go wide. He pours more magicka into the spell, desperate now, but the result is the same. You are untouchable. The true genius of the Lesser Ward, and the reason it is actually amazing, lies in how the game engine calculates continuous damage versus burst damage. This brings us to our core in-game fact. Dragon Breath attacks are coded similarly to the novice destruction sprays, flames, frostbite, sparks. They are not one giant 500 damage explosion. They are dozens of tiny, cessed, rapid-fire packets of damage. A Lesser Ward, even at its weakest, recharges its integrity slightly every second it is held. When a dragon bathes you in fire, the ward blocks the first packet of damage, breaks, recharges instantly, blocks the next, and so on. Or, if your magicka pool is deep enough to sustain the hold, it simply eats the entire stream. You can stand toe-to-toe with an ancient dragon, a creature whose voice shreds the sky, and negate its most terrifying weapon with a spell a novice learns on their first day at college. It's an image that defies the visual language of the game. A massive, scaly beast rears back, its throat glowing with the fires of creation, and unleashes a torrent of hell. And there stands the Dragonborn holding up a little sparkly plate of light, completely unharmed. It's like stopping a freight train with a traffic cone. It feels like cheating, but it is actually a masterful application of magical theory. The lore behind wards is surprisingly dense for such a fleeting mechanic. According to the text, response to Bero's speech, which you can find in the Arcaneum if you can dodge Urag Groshub's glare, the School of Restoration is often mocked by the other schools for being passive. Destruction mages blow things up, alteration mages change the world, restoration mages just fix the mess. But the ward is the Restoration School's middle finger to that criticism. It is an assertion of will. Unlike a physical shield which relies on the strength of the arm and the quality of the steel, a ward is a projection of the caster's spirit. It requires constant focus. In the lore, maintaining a ward is described as a mental battle. You are pitting your reality against the incoming reality of the spell. The game mechanics reflect this mental battle through the delay. When you press the cast button, the ward doesn't appear instantly at full strength. It swells. It takes about a second to fully charge up to that 40-point threshold. This wind-up is where most novices die. They cast it too late, just as the lightning bolt hits, and get fried. It requires anticipation. You must be proactive. not reactive. You have to predict the enemy's anger. It transforms combat from a twitch reaction shooter into a rhythm game. You see the enemy mage's hands glow, you start your charge, then there is the sound. Bethesda's sound design team deserves a raise for the ward audio. When it absorbs a spell, it makes this satisfying. That deep thrum crack noise, like a whip breaking the sound barrier underwater. It feels heavy. When a high-level Draga Deathlord shouts Fusro Der at you, the lesser ward doesn't just block the damage, it negates the stagger. This is a game changer. Usually unrelenting force sends the Dragonborn ragdolling across the room, knocking over every urn and burial jar in a physics engine tantrum. But if you hold up a lesser ward, you stand your ground. You might slide back an inch, boots carving grooves into the stone, but you remain upright. The shout washes over the ward, breaking against the magical geometry, and you are left standing there, ready to counterattack, looking incredibly cool while doing so. However, the community is torn on the practicality of this. Fans have debated for over a decade whether wards are viable for a pure mage build on the highest difficulty settings. The detractors point to the magicka cost. Lesser ward drains roughly 34 magicka per second. That is an exorbitant price for a shield that breaks if a skeever sneezes on it too hard physically. They argue that the best defense is a good offense. Why block the fireball when you could have just dual cast a thunderbolt and killed the caster before they fired? They say the most efficient way to deal with damage in Skyrim is to pause time and eat 47 wheels of cheese in a single microsecond, a digestive feat that would kill a lesser mortal instantly. But the ward apologists, the true tacticians, argue that the ward is about control. It forces the enemy to waste their magicka. If you block a mage's attacks for 10 seconds, they run dry. They are forced to pull out a dagger and charge you, and a mage with a dagger is just a target practice dummy wearing a robe. The ward allows you to dictate the pace of the fight. It is the spell of the thinking mirror. There is also a fascinating obscure interaction with the absorption mechanic. If a player has the Atronach stone active or the Atronach perk from the alteration tree, the ward can glitch in beneficial ways. Sometimes the spell hitting the ward counts as the player being hit by magic, triggering the magicka absorption chance. This means that by blocking a spell with a ward, you might actually gain magicka, refilling the very tank you're using to hold the shield. It creates a perpetual motion machine of magical defense. You become a battery that recharges by being attacked. It's the magical equivalent of telling a bully to stop hitting yourself, while using their own fist to block their punches. Let's not forget the sheer aesthetic of the spell in dark environments. In the gloom of a Nordic ruin, where the only light comes from the glowing eyes of the undead, the ward casts a clean white light. It illuminates the immediate area better than a torch because it doesn't flicker. It is steady. It reveals the rot on the Drauga's face as it leans in to shout. It highlights the tripwire you are about to step on. In a way, it is a continuation of the clairvoyance theme, a tool for seeing clearly in a hostile world, but it demands respect. If your magicka runs out, the ward shatters, and the shatter animation is violent. The light doesn't just fade, it explodes outward, staggering you. If you mismanage your resources, your own shield becomes your enemy, leaving you stunned and open to a follow-up attack. It is a spell that punishes greed. You cannot hold it forever. You must drop it, regenerate, and cast again. So the Dragonborn stands in the snow, the dragon circling overhead. The beast dives, opening its maw. The fire comes, a wall of orange death. The Dragonborn does not run. They do not hide behind a rock. They raise their hand. The air warps. The fire hits the lesser ward and splits, flowing around the adventurer like water around a stone. The magicka bar ticks down. Drain, drain, drain. But the health bar doesn't move. The dragon passes, confused, banking for another turn. The Dragonborn drops the hand, the white light fading, and draws a weapon. The enemy has spent its breath. Now, it is your turn. This defensive mastery opens the door for a different kind of combat. Once you're close enough to smell the sulfur on the dragon's breath, you realize that a sword is good, but sometimes you need a weapon that doesn't just cut, it needs to catch a soul. You need something that feels weightless in the hand but strikes with the fury of oblivion. The ward fades, and the purple glow of conjuration begins to pool in your palm. The dragon roars, banking high above the snow-dusted pines, but down on the ground the Dragonborn does not reach for a scabbard. There is no rasp of steel against leather, no clunky fumbling with a hilt. Instead, there is a sharp, distinct shing, a sound like a tuning fork struck against a crystal. and suddenly the air in the adventurer's right hand solidifies. It coalesces into a jagged, ethereal shape, glowing with the malevolent purple light of the soul cairn. This is not metal forged by Yorland Greymane at the Skyforge. This is the bound sword. For many players, the conjuration school is simply the one that summons meat shields. You cast a flame atronach to distract a bear, or you raise a zombie to carry your burdens, metaphorically speaking, since zombies are notoriously bad at inventory management. But the bound weapon branch of the tree is a path often ignored by pure mages who prefer to keep their hands clean, and by warriors who trust only cold, hard steel. This is a tragedy, because the bound sword is arguably the most efficient weapon in the entire game for the pragmatic traveller. Consider the physics of Skyrim. Everything has weight. A steel sword weighs 10 units, a Daedric sword weighs 16. That weight drags on your stamina bar every time you sprint, every time you power attack. But a bound sword, it weighs absolutely nothing. It is a weapon made of pure magicka and intent. When you swing it, you are swinging air that cuts. This means you can power attack more often, sprint longer, and, crucially for the loot goblins among us, carry exactly 16 more pounds of dragon bones and cheese wheels back to Whiterun. It is the ultimate minimalist tool. The core in-game fact that makes this spell a sleeper hit lies in the perks. Specifically, the Mystic Binding perk. Without it, the bound sword is roughly equivalent to an unsmithed orcish sword. Respectable, but hardly legendary. But with the perk, which is accessible fairly early in the skill tree, the base damage jumps to equal a Daedric sword of exquisite quality. You're effectively wielding one of the rarest, most powerful weapon types in the game at level 5 simply by investing 2 perk points. You skip the grinding, you skip the mining of ebony ore in dangerous orc strongholds, you skip the tedious hammering at the anvil, you simply snap your fingers and you're holding a weapon that can cleave through dwarven armour like it's wet parchment. But the utility goes deeper than just damage. Let's talk about the Soul Stealer perk. Usually to fill a soul gem, you have to cast the Soul Trap spell, alerting the enemy and wasting magicka, or use a weapon enchanted with Soul Trap. The problem with enchanted weapons is that they are hungry. They run out of charge. You find yourself in the middle of a dungeon, staring at a Draugr Deathlord, and realizing your sword is empty. You have to pause, open your inventory, scroll to your soul gems, and awkwardly feed your sword a lesser soul just to get it working again. It breaks the flow. It's tedious. The bound sword with Soul Stealer never runs out of charge. Every single hit applies Soul Trap automatically. It is an infinite battery. You become an industrial soul harvesting machine. You clear a dungeon of skeletons and skeevers, and you walk out with 20 filled soul gems, ready to level your enchanting skill back at home. It streamlines the entire economy of the game. You're not just a warrior, you're a magical factory. However, there is a darker side to this convenience, a piece of obscure lore that might make you hesitate before casting it next time. What is a bound sword? It isn't just hard magic. According to the Darkest Darkness text and conversations with high-level conjurers like Finis Gesta, a bound weapon is technically a lesser Daedra. You're not summoning a sword, you're summoning a chaotic spirit from the plains of oblivion and forcing it into the shape of a sword. You're gripping a demon by the neck, twisting its essence until it becomes a sharp edge, and using it to kill. Think about the implications of that. The weapon is alive in a sense. It is a caged entity, vibrating with the desire to return to the chaotic creatia from which it came. The hum of the blade isn't just a sound effect, it's a scream of confinement. When you sheathe the spell, you are banishing the Daedra back to the void. It adds a layer of grim intimacy to combat. You aren't fighting alone, you are fighting with a prisoner in your hand. This explains the weapon's appearance, jagged, translucent, looking more like a shard of broken glass than a forged blade. It is unstable reality held together by your will. This brings us to the great community debate, smithing versus magic. The crafting loot purists will tell you that a bound sword is garbage because you cannot upgrade it at a grindstone. You cannot drink a Fortify smithing potion and temper it to deal 500 damage. They are right, mathematically. In the ultra-late game, a physical sword forged by a master smith will always outdamage a bound sword. But the lore mages and role players argue that the bound sword offers something better: freedom. You don't have to carry repair hammers if you're using mods, or worry about finding quicksilver ingots. You're never disarmed. If a Draugr shouts the weapon out of your hand, you just laugh and conjure another one. You are never defenseless. You can walk into a secure location like the Thalmor Embassy, stripped of all your gear, and still be the most dangerous person in the room. There is also the stealth aspect. A glowing purple sword seems counterintuitive for a thief. It acts like a giant neon sign saying, "I am here! Please shoot me!" However, the game mechanics are surprisingly forgiving. The light emitted by the bound sword does affect your stealth meter, but not as much as a torch, and if you take the quiet casting perk from the illusion tree, summoning the sword becomes silent. This leads to one of the most satisfying gameplay loops for a Nightblade class. You sneak up behind a target empty-handed. They hear nothing. You cast. The sword materializes instantly. You strike for a 15 times sneak attack damage multiplier. The guard drops. You banish the sword. You're empty-handed again. There is no murder weapon, no evidence, just a body and a mage walking away whistling a tune. It is worth noting the visual flair the spell adds to a playthrough. In first-person view, the flames of the bound sword lick up the side of the screen, distorting the air. It makes you feel powerful. It makes you feel arcane. It pairs beautifully with the mage armor spells, stone flesh, iron flesh, creating a visual identity of a warrior who wears no metal but is harder than steel. But let's be honest about the drawbacks. The sound of casting it, that loud shing, can get repetitive. And if you are playing without quiet casting, summoning the sword in a dungeon is like ringing a dinner bell for every Falmer in a 5-mile radius. "Hello, fresh meat with a magic stick is here." You have to be tactical. You cast it before you open the door, not after. There is a specific interaction with the Oblivion Binding perk that turns the bound sword into the ultimate anti-summoner weapon. If you hit an enemy's summoned Atronach or raised zombie with a bound sword that has this perk, the creature is instantly banished or turned. No damage calculation. No whittling down health bars. One tap, and the Frost Atronach protecting the enemy Necromancer goes poof. It is incredibly satisfying to sprint through a hail of ice spikes, slap the Atronach once to send it home, and then descend on the panicked caster. It makes you the ultimate counter mage. You're using Oblivion to fight Oblivion. The Dragonborn, now wielding this weightless shard of the void, moves with uncanny speed. The bandit tries to raise a shield, but the bound sword is lighter, faster. It slips past the guard. The strike connects, not with a metallic clang, but with a wet, energetic tear. The soul is trapped. The bandit falls. The Dragonborn unclenches their hand, and the sword dissolves into purple mist, fading back to the plains of oblivion until it is needed again. As the adrenaline fades, the adventurer realizes that the commotion has attracted attention, not from more bandits, but from something far more chaotic. The sounds of shouting echo from the next chamber. Angry, confused shouting. It seems the locals are having a disagreement, and for the cunning mage, a disagreement is just an opportunity to pour gasoline on the fire. The Dragonborn stays low, moving toward the noise, but instead of summoning a weapon, their hands begin to glow with a soft, angry red light. Why fight them yourself when you can make them fight each other? It is time to embrace the madness of the illusion school once more, but this time, we aren't guiding ourselves. We are breaking the minds of others. The red mist swirls, heavy and oppressive, promising violence without lifting a finger. The red light in the Dragonborn's palm isn't the angry, unstable crackle of fire, nor the jagged purple of a trapped soul. It is a soft, insidious crimson, like blood diffusing in water. It pulses with a rhythm that mimics a heartbeat. Thump, 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 syncing with the adrenaline of the caster. This is fury. It is the spell that turns a cohesive, disciplined bandit clan into a barroom brawl with lethal consequences. We find our hero crouched in the shadows of Valtheim Towers, that notorious toll bridge east of Whiterun where the bandits have the audacity to charge a road tax to the Dragonborn. The sun is setting, casting long shadows across the White River. A bandit chief leans against the railing, sharpening an axe, while his subordinates argue over a piece of venison. It is a scene of domestic villainy. The Dragonborn could draw that bound sword we just discussed and carve a path through them. They could raise a lesser ward and march up the ramp. But why sweat? Why risk a stray arrow to the knee? The Dragonborn releases the spell. It is a quiet projectile, a small orb of red energy that travels slower than an arrow, but tracks slightly, seeking the warmth of a living mind. It strikes the bandit sitting closest to the cooking pot. There is no explosion. No damage number floats into the ether. The bandit simply flinches, shaking his head as if a fly buzzed in his ear. Then the overlay kicks in, that distinct, oily red shader that coats the enemy's model. In the game code, Fury does something mechanically fascinating, just which serves as our core fact for this section. It temporarily alters the NPC's aggression value to its maximum setting, and, crucially, sets their assistance value to 0. This means they are not just angry, they are socially isolated. To the game engine, this bandit is no longer a member of the bandit faction. He's now an enemy of everything. The wolf, the mud crab, his own brother, all are valid targets. The bandit draws his dagger, screams something incoherent about Skyrim belonging to the Nords, even if he is an orc, and plunges the blade into the back of the archer next to him. The chaos is instantaneous. The archer screams, the chief roars, "Traitor!" and swings his two-handed axe. The furied bandit doesn't defend himself, he attacks the chief. Within seconds, the camp is a whirlwind of steel and shouting. The Dragonborn, still hidden, simply watches. This is the spark of social chaos. It is the most voyeuristic form of combat in the game. You're the director of a play where everyone dies in the third act. There is a dark humour to illusion magic that is often overlooked. We think of mages as scholars, but the illusionist is a prankster with a god complex. Lore-wise, as detailed in the text Reality and Other Falsehoods, altering the world is difficult. Moving a mountain requires immense power. But convincing a man that the mountain has moved, that is easy. Convincing a man that his best friend is actually a Dremora lord trying to eat his soul, even easier. The book suggests that the universe is just a shared hallucination, and the illusionist is simply changing the channel. However, the Fury has a limitation that frustrates many aspiring puppet masters: the level cap. The base spell only works on creatures and people up to level 6. This is pitifully low. By the time you reach the mid-game, most enemies will simply resist it, displaying that heartbreaking "target is too powerful for Fury" message in the top corner of your screen. This leads many players to abandon the spell early, assuming it doesn't scale. But here is where the community debate rages. The illusionist versus stealth archer argument is a staple of Skyrim forums. The stealth archer kills things one by one, efficiently, from a distance. It is safe. It is boring. The illusionist, however, scales differently. Fans point out that by taking the Animage and Kindred Mage perks, and critically the dual casting perk, you can overcharge Fury and its bigger brothers, Frenzy and Mayhem, to affect enemies well into the level 40s and 50s. The debate centres on pacifist runs. Is it pacifism if you cast Fury on a group of Thalmor Justicars and watch them slaughter each other? Technically, your kill count in the stats menu remains 0. You didn't strike the killing blow, you simply introduced a suggestion, a very violent suggestion. The community is split. Some say it is the purest form of pacifism, using the enemy's own violent nature against them. Others argue it is the most sinister playstyle possible, a psychological violation far worse than a clean death by arrow. You aren't just killing them, you're dismantling their trust, their hierarchy, their sanity. Let's return to Valtheim Towers. The fight is over. The bandit chief stands alone, breathing heavily, surrounded by the bodies of his crew. The red glow fades from the instigator's corpse. The chief looks around, confused. The AI doesn't have a grief state, but the pause is palpable. He sheathes his weapon and goes back to his patrol route, stepping over the body of the man he just decapitated. "Must have been the wind," he mutters. This absurdity is part of the charm, but there is a strategic layer here that goes beyond just watching them fight. Fury is the ultimate crowd control. If you're being overwhelmed by 3 enemies, hitting one with Fury takes 2 enemies out of the fight. The one you hit, and the one he starts attacking. It buys you time. It allows you to heal, to recast your stone flesh, or to simply run away while they are distracted. There is an obscure lore tidbit found in the 2920. The last year of the First Era series regarding the nature of the calm and fury dichotomy. It suggests that these spells don't create emotions, they uncork them. Everyone has a seed of rage, everyone has a seed of fear. The spell simply removes the inhibitor. It implies that the bandit didn't attack his friend because of magic. He attacked his friend because he always wanted to, and the magic just gave him permission. It paints the inhabitants of Skyrim in a grim light, a powder keg of repressed violence waiting for a spark. We must also appreciate the sound design again. The sound of fury hitting a target is a sharp snap, like a dry twig breaking, followed by a low, simmering boil sound effect that persists as long as the effect is active. It is the auditory equivalent of a headache. It sounds uncomfortable. It sounds like high blood pressure, and what happens when you miss? Because fury is a projectile, it has travel time. If the bandit moves, the red orb sails past him and hits the wall. Or worse, it hits a neutral NPC. Picture this. You are trying to fury a vampire attacking a town, but you miss and hit Nazim. Suddenly, the Cloud District's most annoying resident pulls a dagger and attacks the Whiterun Guard. The guards, doing their duty, flatten him instantly. You have just committed the perfect crime. No bounty, if you were hidden, no witnesses, just a tragic accident involving a very angry farm owner. The spell encourages a different way of looking at the game world. You stop seeing enemies as health bars to be depleted and start seeing them as resources to be managed. A giant camp isn't a death sentence, it's a weapon. And if you can lure a group of bandits near a mammoth and cast fury on the mammoth, well, you don't need to lift a finger. You just watch the physics engine launch bandits into the stratosphere. There is a visceral, almost cruel satisfaction in the illusion sniper playstyle. You sit on a ledge, invisible, you cast fury, one bandit kills another, the survivor is weakened, you cast calm to stop him from searching for you, you wait for his health to regenerate slightly, just to be sporting. Then you cast fury again when his patrol partner walks by. It is a slow, methodical dismantling of a dungeon. It lacks the visceral crunch of a warhammer or the explosive power of a fireball, but it creates a story. Each room becomes a mini-drama of betrayal. Of course, the downside is loot. If a bandit falls off a cliff while fighting his friend, his loot goes with him. If they kill each other in deep water, good luck finding the bodies. And since you didn't land the killing blow, you miss out on some experience points for weapon skills. But for the mage who prefers to keep their robes clean, it is a small price to pay. As the dust settles at Valtheim Towers, the Dragonborn finally steps out of the shadows. The lone survivor, the chief, spots you. He draws his weapon again, but he is broken, battered, and at 10% health. A single gust of frostbite would finish him. Or perhaps, you just leave him. Let him explain to the next patrol why everyone is dead. The red light fades from your hand. The chaos has served its purpose. But as you loot the bodies, taking the gold, the lockpicks, the arrows, you notice something else. Iron ore, lots of it. These bandits were hoarding it. And while iron is useful for crafting 500 daggers to grind smithing, it's heavy and nearly worthless in its raw form. Unless, of course, you know the secret of the Halted Stream camp. Unless you know how to turn lead into gold, or rather iron into silver. The Dragonborn looks at the chunk of raw iron in the dead bandit's inventory. It's heavy, dull, and grey, but with the right vibration, the right alteration of atomic structure, it could be jewellery. It could be wealth. The red of fury is replaced by the golden shimmer of greed. It is time to open the economy of Skyrim and break it wide open. North of Whiterun, past the swaying wheat fields of the local farms and just beyond the reach of the city guards patrols, lies a bandit camp that looks, from the outside, like a simple wooden fort built into a hill. It is called Halted Stream Camp. Most adventurers stumble upon it while chasing a bounty, or perhaps hunting a mammoth for its tusk. The exterior is guarded by poachers who seem more interested in skinning giant beasts than fighting a dragonborn. But inside the mine, past the tripwires and the inevitable pitfall traps, sits a bandit chief who is arguably the most financially incompetent criminal in all of Skyrim. The Dragonborn clears the mine. It is a messy affair, likely involving the lingering red haze of that fury spell we just discussed, or perhaps the efficient silent work of a bound bow. The chief falls. On the table next to him, amidst a scattering of loose coins and a few tankards of ale, lies a spell tome. It isn't glowing with the menace of destruction, or the purple haze of conjuration. It has the greenish-gold cover of the Alteration School. It is the tome of Transmute Mineral Ore. To the uninitiated, this spell sounds like a utility cantrip, something a miner might use to polish a rock. But to the veteran player, this book is the holy grail of early-game capitalism. It is the only spell in the base game that allows you to fundamentally rewrite the value of an object in your inventory. You aren't just buffing your armor or lighting a dark room, You're performing alchemy without a lab. The mechanic is deceptively simple, serving as our core in-game fact. When cast, Transmute converts one piece of unrefined iron ore in your inventory into silver ore. If you cast it again, it turns that silver ore into gold ore. It prioritizes silver to gold first, then iron to silver. This means if you walk into a mine with 50 chunks of iron, worth about 2 gold each, and you have the patience of a saint and enough magicka potions, you can walk out with 50 chunks of gold, worth 50 gold each. That is a 2,400% increase in value, generated purely from thin air. The implications for the Skyrim economy are catastrophic. If the Dragonborn were a real person in a real economy, the sheer volume of gold ore they flood into the market would cause hyperinflation that would make the East Empire Company collapse within a week. Belethor in Whiterun would be weeping as the value of his gold septims plummeted because some adventurer in iron boots just synthesized more gold in an afternoon than the reach mines produce in a year. But in the game, the vendors just smile and hand over their life savings for a stack of gold rings. Community debates have long centered on the iron dagger versus gold ring meta. For years, the fastest way to level smithing was to buy iron ingots and leather strips and forge thousands of iron daggers. It was the spam method. But after Bethesda patched the experience gain to be based on the value of the item created, the Transmute Spell became the kingmaker. Now, the optimal strategy is to buy all the iron ore you can find, transmute it to gold, smelt it into gold ingots, and craft 2 gold rings per ingot. The value is higher, yes, the XP gain is massive, and you level alterations simultaneously while casting the spell. It is the perfect efficiency loop. It is the Sigma grind set of Tamriel. However, using the spell is an experience. It is not a quick zap. The animation for Transmute is slow and deliberate. The Dragonborn raises both hands, weaving a lattice of golden light. The sound design is a low, metallic thrum that crescendos into a sharp ching, the sound of a coin dropping. It is incredibly satisfying the first 10 times. By the 100th time, as you stand in the middle of the Whiterun market staring at the floor while your magicka regenerates, it becomes a test of sanity. You cast, ching, you wait, you cast, ching. Passers-by must think you are seizing or perhaps praying to Zenithar, the god of toil. There is a delightful irony in where this spell is found. Halted Stream Camp is full of iron veins. The bandits are mining iron. The chief has the book right there on his desk. If he had just read the book, he wouldn't need to be a bandit. He could have turned that entire mine into a gold reserve and bought the city of Whiterun. Instead, he was using it as a paperweight for his mammoth cheese. It is a subtle piece of environmental storytelling that suggests intelligence is the true state that matters in Skyrim, not strength. The bandit had the tool but lacked the vision. Lore-wise, Transmute belongs to the school of alteration, which is often misunderstood as physical illusion. But Tolfdir, the absent-minded professor at the College of Winterhold, explains that alteration is about convincing the universe that it is wrong. You are asserting that the iron is not iron, it is gold, and if your will is strong enough, the universe agrees. This parallels real-world alchemical traditions, the pursuit of the Philosopher's Stone. In Skyrim, however, you don't need a legendary stone, you just need a book you found in a hole in the ground. There is an obscure lore tidbit found in the book Breathing Water that discusses the philosophy of alteration. It suggests that to alter the world, one must understand that the world is fluid. A rock is only hard because we agree it is hard. Iron is only iron because the earthbones say so. Transmute is a direct violation of these natural laws. It is a small act of godhood. It is forcing reality to bend to your greed. But the spell has a cost beyond magicka. Time. Because it is an adept-level spell, despite being found in a low-level area, it costs a massive amount of magicka for a novice character. You cast it once, and your blue bar is empty. You have to wait. This leads to the wait function exploit where players cast, press the wait 1 hour button to instantly refill magicka, and cast again. It breaks immersion completely. You're effectively standing in the middle of a shop for 3 days straight, motionless, flashing gold light every hour while the shopkeeper stares at you in horror, wondering if you're ever going to leave or buy something. This spell also changes the way you view loot. Suddenly those heavy iron ores you used to ignore in dungeons become precious. You start carrying a pickaxe everywhere. You become a geologist. Is that a Draugr Deathlord? I don't care. There's an iron vein behind him. The combat becomes secondary to the resource gathering. You are no longer saving the world, you're strip mining it. One of the funniest interactions occurs when you give the transmuted gold to a follower. "Here, Lydia, carry this gold ore," she groans. "I am sworn to carry your burdens." She doesn't realise she's carrying a retirement fund. If she just ran off with your inventory, she could buy a palace in solitude, but she dutifully hauls it back to your house so you can make jewellery to enchant and sell back to the very people you bought the iron from. It is a closed loop of economic dominance. Visually, the spell is subtle but distinct. The golden aura that surrounds the hands is softer than the harsh yellow of restoration healing spells. It looks expensive. It looks like wealth. When you cast it in a dark cave, it illuminates the walls with a warm, greedy glow. It's fitting. But let's be honest, the real danger of transmute isn't the magicka cost. It's the carry weight. Gold ore is heavy, silver ore is heavy. As you frantically convert your iron, you realise you're becoming over-encumbered. You're literally weighed down by your own success. You end up waddling out of halted stream camp, unable to run, a slow-moving target for any wolf that happens to wander by. It's a Aesop's fable in real time. The goose that laid the golden egg, except the goose is a heavy armour orc who can't jog. The Dragonborn, now laden with gold ore and silver ingots, stands at the smelter in Whiterun. The heat of the forge warms the cool night air, the rhythm of the bellows, the clang of the hammer, it is peaceful. The violence of the bandit camp feels far away. Here, it is just industry. You're crafting, you're building, you're preparing, and as you craft those rings, slipping a diamond into the gold setting, you realise you need to enchant them to get the maximum value. You need souls, and you need spells to put on those rings. But enchanting drains your magical resources, and sometimes, waiting for magicka to regenerate naturally is just too slow. Sometimes, you need power now, and you don't care what it costs. Deep in the ruins of Labyrinthian, there is a spell that understands this desperation. A spell that offers a trade. Not iron for gold, but something far more precious. It asks, how much of your own life are you willing to burn to keep casting? The Dragonborn looks at their red health bar and their blue magicka bar and wonders, surely I don't need all of this blood. The road to Labyrinthian is paved with the bones of ambitious mages. It is a place where the wind doesn't just blow. It screams through the broken arches of an ancient city that died before the First Empire was even a thought. The Dragonborn stands at the entrance, the great stone door sealed by the talk of the labyrinth, a relic obtained only after navigating the treacherous politics of the College of Winterhold. Inside, the air is stagnant, heavy with the dust of millennia and the lingering resentment of the dragon cult. Deep within this ruin, past the skeletal dragon that rattles its way out of the floor and the spectral draugr that haunt the hallways, lies the chasm. It is a room that feels wrong. The geometry is oppressive, and there, resting on an arcane enchanter as if left by a student who decided the price was too high, is a spell tome. It doesn't glow with the warm light of healing or the aggressive spark of destruction. It radiates a sickly, pale green aura. This is equilibrium. To the novice, equilibrium appears to be a mistake. Why would anyone want a spell that hurts them? In a world where everything, from mud crabs to dragons, is trying to lower your health bar to 0, voluntarily helping them seems like madness. The spell description is blunt. Convert 25 points of health into magicka per second. It is a trade, a transaction. You're selling your blood for power. But to the master wizard, equilibrium is the key to infinite sustainability. The visual design of the spell is strikingly unique, and it serves as our core in-game fact for this section. Unlike restoration spells which project golden light outward to heal, or destruction spells which throw elements forward, equilibrium draws energy inward. When cast, a stream of green energy seems to be ripped from the caster's chest, swirling back into their hand. It looks parasitic. It looks like you're feeding on yourself, and mechanically you are. The game engine treats this self-inflicted damage as hostile in a very specific way. It can kill you. Unlike many modern games where blood magic mechanics stop at one hit point to prevent accidental suicide, Skyrim lets you drain yourself dry. You can stand in the safety of your player home in solitude, cast equilibrium a second too long while distracted by a sweet roll, and simply drop dead. It is a spell with no safety rails. This danger is part of the allure. Using equilibrium in combat is a high-stakes gambling game. Imagine you are fighting a dragon priest. Your magicka is empty. You cannot cast a ward to block his fireball. You cannot cast a thunderbolt to interrupt him. You have full health, but health is useless if you can't fight back. So, you tap Equilibrium. Your health bar plummets, red turning to black, while your blue magicka bar surges. You're trading survivability for ammunition. It is a frantic balancing act. If you swap too much, the Dragon Priest's next attack will kill you instantly. If you swap too little, you won't have enough magicka to finish the fight. You are living on the razor's edge. The sound design reinforces this anxiety. As you hold the spell, there is a distinct rhythmic thumping sound, a heartbeat that gets faster and more desperate. It is the auditory cue of your body protesting. Yet it is the sound of your heart working overtime to pump blood that is being transmuted into magical energy. It creates a visceral, uncomfortable ASMR experience that fits the Forbidden Knowledge theme perfectly. Lore-wise, Equilibrium is an anomaly. It is classified as an alteration spell, which implies you are altering your own biological reality. You're changing the physical substance of your vitality into the metaphysical substance of magicka. This aligns with the obscure lore found in the notes on the Lunar Forge, which discusses the transfer of life energies. It suggests that magicka and life force are two sides of the same coin, separated only by the limitations of the mortal frame. By casting Equilibrium, you are blurring that line. You're becoming a vessel where energy flows freely between body and spirit, regardless of the damage it causes to the meat in between. This spell is also the cornerstone of the most famous power leveling exploit in the community's history, the Infinite Loop. You equip a healing spell, like fast healing, in your left hand and Equilibrium in your right. You hold both buttons down. Your right hand drains your health to fill your magicka. Your left hand uses that magicka to heal your health. You become a perpetual motion machine of suffering and recovery. You stand there vibrating with green and gold light, leveling restoration and alteration simultaneously. It is the magical equivalent of lifting weights, tearing the muscle to build it back stronger. But there is a gritty reality to this that the game glosses over. If this were a movie, the Dragonborn would be screaming. The process of converting life to magic must be agonizing. It is the ultimate expression of the mage's dedication. A warrior proves their worth by enduring the pain of others. A mage proves their worth by enduring their own. There is a fascinating interaction with the Necromage perk in the Restoration tree. If the Dragonborn is a vampire, they are classified as undead. Necromage makes all spells more effective against undead. Therefore, if a vampire player casts Equilibrium, the spell drains more health and restores more magicka. The exchange rate becomes more volatile. It fits the vampire fantasy perfectly, a creature of the night, burning through their stolen vitality to fuel dark powers. It turns the Dragonborn into a high-performance sports car running on nitroglycerin. Fast, powerful, and likely to explode at any moment. Let's talk about the location again. Labyrinthian. It is the ancient testing ground for archmages. That this spell is found here, and not in the college library, suggests it was once a standard part of the curriculum that was deemed too dangerous for modern students. Perhaps Shalidor, the great maze maker, believed that a true mage must understand the cost of power. He put the book in a room full of Draugr to ensure that anyone who found it was already fighting for their life. It wasn't a gift. It was a desperate option for a desperate test. The dangerous dance of vitality changes how you view potions. When you have Equilibrium, health potions become magicka potions. If you run out of magicka, you drink a health potion and convert it. You start seeing your red bar as a backup battery. This fundamentally shifts the economy of your inventory. You stop hoarding blue bottles and start hoarding red ones because red can be anything. Red is universal currency. However, the spell has a cast time delay that can be fatal. It takes about half a second to start draining. In the heat of battle, that half second is an eternity. You press the button, waiting for the surge, and an arrow hits you. Now you are draining health after taking damage. You panic. You try to stop, but the animation has to finish. You die. The "you died" screen spins around your ragdoll and you realize that your own greed killed you, not the enemy. But when it works, it feels like cheating the gods. You are cornered by Falmer in a Dwemer ruin. They have poisoned you. Your vision is blurring. You have no magicka. You cast Equilibrium. Dipping your health into the danger zone and use that burst of energy to cast a mass paralysis scroll you've been saving. The Falmer stiffen and fall. You survive. You stagger back, chugging a potion. alive only because you were willing to bleed for it. The Dragonborn stands in the chasm, the green light fading from their hands. The heartbeat slows, the magicka bar is full, humming with potential. The health bar is low, throbbing red. It is a precarious state, but a powerful one. You have fuel, now you need a fire. And what better way to use that hard-earned, blood-bought magicka than to create something that exists solely to explode? You don't want to summon a Dremora Lord who will judge you. You want something fast, something reckless, something that runs into the fray and screams. You want the spirit of the hunt set on fire. The Dragonborn looks at the next spell in their mental arsenal. It is a reward from a high elf who regretted his life choices. It is a spell that summons a creature not of flesh, but of pure, volatile energy. A ghost wolf, a kamikaze. The path from the blood-soaked floors of Labyrinthian leads us north, toward the pale, frozen coast where the sea of ghosts bites at the land. Here, buried in the snowdrifts, lies Highgate Ruins. It is a place most adventurers skip unless they are hunting dragon priests, specifically the floating lich known as Voken. But inside, standing over a dead Draugr like an impatient schoolteacher, is a Nord woman named Anska. She isn't a high elf, despite the sophisticated nature of the magic she seeks, but she possesses a scroll obsession that would make any Thalmor wizard jealous. She needs help navigating the ruins. If you assist her, shielding her from the undead hordes and defeating the dragon priest, she rewards you not with gold nor a levelled sword, but with a spell tome that is entirely unique in the grand catalogue of Skyrim's magic. This is the tome of Conjure Flaming Familiar. To the unobservant player, the name sounds redundant. Familiar usually implies that weak spectral wolf novices summon in Riverwood to distract a mudcrab. Flaming sounds like a destruction cloak, but put them together and you have something that defies the standard categorization of summoned allies. You're not calling a spirit to fight by your side, you're not summoning a tank to hold aggro, you're summoning a homing missile made of ectoplasm and arson. The visual design of this spell is delightful in its simplicity. You cast it, and with a sound like a match striking a gas leak, a wolf appears. But it isn't the translucent blue of the standard familiar. It is a fiery, glowing orange, wreathed in flames that lick the air around it. And here is the kicker. It doesn't wait for orders. It doesn't circle you protectively. It immediately locks onto the nearest hostile entity, sprints toward them with the desperate speed of a creature that knows it has seconds to live and detonates. This brings us to our core in-game fact. The Flaming Familiar is the only summoning spell in the game that acts as a ranged damage projectile with pathfinding. Destruction spells like Fireball fly in a straight line. If there is a wall in the way, they hit the wall. The Flaming Familiar runs around the wall, it navigates stairs, it jumps over gaps. It is a smart bomb. You can cast it from the safety of a hallway, watch it turn the corner, hear a distant bark and then enjoy the muffled thump of an explosion. It allows for indirect warfare that no other spell provides. You're essentially playing fetch, but the stick is a bomb. And the dog is also a bomb. The damage mechanics are where things get interesting for the min-maxers in the community. Technically, this is a conjuration spell. It levels the conjuration skill when cast in combat. However, the explosion deals fire damage. This means, and this is a detail often overlooked, the damage is scaled by the Augmented Flames perks in the Destruction tree. If you are a Master of Destruction with both ranks of Augmented Flames, and perhaps the Azadal mask which boosts fire damage further, your little exploding dog becomes a tactical nuke. It bridges the gap between the two schools of magic, rewarding a Pyromancer Summoner hybrid build that is as chaotic as it sounds. But let's pause and consider the ethical implications or the obscure lore of what we're doing here. In the Elder Scrolls universe, a familiar is typically described as a minor spirit of the land, or a weak Daedric vestige forced into the shape of a wolf, the most common predator in Skyrim. It is a bound spirit. When you cast the standard familiar spell, the wolf fights until it is killed, at which point the spirit is banished. Painful, perhaps, but temporary. With the Flaming Familiar, you are summoning this spirit specifically to die. You are infusing its very essence with volatile energy that consumes it. The wolf isn't attacking the enemy with its teeth, it is running to them to release the agony of its own existence. There is a grim humour to the AI behaviour. Sometimes, if there are no enemies nearby, the Flaming Familiar just stands there, burning, looking at you with those fiery eyes. It pants, it waits. and then inevitably it explodes anyway. You're usually taking a chunk of your health with it. It is a spell that demands caution. It is a kamikaze ghost wolf that doesn't distinguish between friend and foe when the timer runs out. It is loyal only to the concept of combustion. The community has affectionately dubbed this spell the heat-seeking dog. In the early days of Skyrim forums, players shared stories of using it to clear out unreachable enemies. You know those pesky archers on high ledges in Nordic ruins? The ones you can't reach with a sword and can't aim at because of the awkward angle? Cast a flaming familiar at the bottom of the stairs. The wolf runs up the stairs, finds the archer and solves the problem. It is the ultimate tool for lazy adventurers. Why aim when you can just summon a creature that aims for you? And sound design plays a crucial role in the satisfaction of this spell. The casting sound is a sharp, high-pitched whine of energy, followed by the wet crunch of the wolf materializing. Then comes the panting, fast, rhythmic like a bellows, and finally the explosion. It isn't the deep, bass-heavy boom of a fireball, it's a sharper, wilder sound. Like a sudden release of pressure. It sounds unstable. It sounds like magic gone wrong, which fits the theme of a spell found in a ruin filled with failed experiments. Strategically, the Flaming Familiar is cheap. Its magicka cost is significantly lower than a fireball or an incinerate. This allows for spam casting. You can summon 3 or 4 of them in rapid succession, though only one can exist at a time. The explosion of the first allows for the immediate casting of the second. It creates a conveyor belt of exploding wolves. Imagine being a bandit in a dark cave. You see a light. A burning wolf runs at you. You shield bash it. It explodes. Before the smoke clears, another burning wolf runs out of the darkness. And another. It is psychological warfare. There is also a fantastic synergy with the rune spells. You place a fire rune on the ground, then cast a flaming familiar. The enemy charges the wolf, steps on the rune, and gets hit by both explosions simultaneously. It is a trap and bait strategy that feels incredibly hunter-esque. You're herding the enemy into their own demise using a literal sheepdog made of fire. However, the spell has its quirks. The wolf is not fast. It runs at the speed of a normal wolf. Fast enemies like vampires or saber cats can actually outrun it. This leads to a hilarious Benny Hill-style chase scene, where a burning dog is frantically trying to catch up to a fleeing vampire to deliver its explosive payload. And because the wolf has low health, a single arrow can kill it before it reaches its target. If it dies early, it doesn't explode, or the explosion is wasted. It requires timing. You have to cast it close enough to ensure a hit, but far enough away to stay out of the blast radius. The Flaming Familiar is a testament to the creativity of the ancient Nords, or perhaps Ansgar's ancestors. It reflects a culture that valued wolves as totems, but also understood the raw power of fire. It is crude, effective, and slightly messy. It lacks the elegance of high elf magic, which would likely involve a precise beam of light. This is a spell that says, I don't need to be precise. I just need to be loud and hot. As you leave Highgate ruins, the sea wind cooling the burns on your hands, you look at your magicka bar. You have mastered the art of navigation, defense, weapons, rage, economy, health swapping, and now remote detonation. You are becoming a versatile mage, but there is still a limitation. You are still bound by physics. You still have to walk over to an item to pick it up. You still have to touch a lever to pull it. But what if you didn't? What if your reach extended as far as your sight? What if you could stand at the entrance of a room and strip it of every valuable item without taking a single step? The Dragonborn looks at a potion bottle resting on a high shelf just out of reach. A normal adventurer would jump, knocking over plates and looking foolish. A master of alteration simply extends a hand. The air shimmers not with fire or ice, but with a distortion of gravity itself. The bottle wobbles, then floats. It drifts through the air, obedient and weightless, into your waiting palm. It is time to learn the art of the lazy looter. It is time for telekinesis. The bottle of alto wine drifts lazily through the air, defying gravity with a casual arrogance that would make Isaac Newton weep. It rotates slowly, suspended in a shimmering violet distortion field, before snapping firmly into the Dragonborn's palm with a satisfying thwack. This is telekinesis, the adept-level alteration spell that turns the mighty Dovahkiin into a Jedi Knight who really just wants a drink without standing up. You can find this spell tome in a few places: Redwater Den, deep within the vampire-infested spring, or simply bought from Tolfdir at the college if your skill is high enough. But wherever you acquire it, the first thing you do is almost always the same. You go into a tavern, stand in a corner, and try to throw a cabbage at a bard. And when the cabbage bounces harmlessly off their loot, dealing 0 damage and earning you a bounty for assault, you realise that telekinesis is not a weapon of war. It is a tool of convenience. It is the long-distance looter's tool. For the thief who hates walking, telekinesis is a godsend. Picture a dungeon room trapped with pressure plates. At the centre, on a pedestal, sits a flawless diamond. To walk there is to risk death by poisoned darts, swinging blades, and fire jets. A warrior would shout whirlwind sprint and pray. A thief would spend 10 minutes disarming the traps. The Alteration Mage simply stands at the doorway, extends a hand, and pulls the diamond to them. It is the ultimate work smarter, not harder spell. It allows you to steal keys from a guard's belt from across the room, if you're very, very lucky with the physics engine, or snatch a potion from a table while hiding in the rafters. But the true power of telekinesis, the reason it is actually amazing and not just a novelty, lies in a specific interaction with the game's time management system. This brings us to our core in-game fact. Telekinesis is the single fastest way to level a skill from 15 to 100 in the entire game, provided you understand the fast travel mechanic. Here is how it works. The game calculates alteration experience based on the magicka cost spent per second of channeling the spell. If you enchant a set of gear, head, chest, ring, necklace, to reduce alteration cost by 100%, the spell becomes free. If you then pick up an object with telekinesis in Riften, open your map, and fast travel to Solitude while still holding the button, the game engine calculates the travel time, which can be 20 plus in-game hours, as if you had been manually holding the spell that entire time. The result is instantaneous mastery. You arrive in Solitude, and the level up sound plays continuously for 30 seconds. Boom, boom, boom. Your alteration shoots from 20 to 100 in a literal blink of an eye. You can then legendary the skill, resetting it to 15, and do it again on the way back to Riften. You effectively become a god of time and space, farming perk points by simply commuting across the map while holding a bucket. It is an exploit, certainly, but one that feels strangely lore-accurate for a master of reality warping. You're bending the laws of the game to your will. Speaking of bending laws, let's discuss the combat application, or lack thereof. The community has long debated the viability of a telekinetic warrior. Can you kill a dragon by throwing cheese wheels at it? The sad answer is, not efficiently. The damage calculation for thrown objects is pitifully low. However, the fun factor is infinite. There is nothing quite like killing a mudcrab by launching a kettle at its face. It turns Skyrim into a physics playground. But there is a deeper, more obscure layer to the lore of telekinesis found in the text Sithis. It mentions that true change comes from the breaking of boundaries. Telekinesis is the most literal interpretation of this. You're breaking the boundary between here and there. Tolfdir, the Alteration Master, constantly prattles on about the flicker of magicka in the air. When you use telekinesis, you can see what he means. The air ripples. The object isn't just floating. It is being gripped by an extension of your own magicka. You are creating a magical limb. Visually, the spell is gorgeous. The purple haze that surrounds the object is distinct from the blue of other magic. It looks alien. It looks like you're interacting with the code of the universe. And the sound? A constant low-frequency hum that pitches up and down as you move the object closer or further away. It sounds like a sci-fi tractor beam, which is a jarring but delightful anachronism in a fantasy setting. One of the most practical yet overlooked uses for telekinesis is cleaning up. Have you ever shouted in a room and knocked every plate, cup and bowl onto the floor? It looks messy. It bothers the role player who wants a tidy home. Telekinesis allows you to pick up items and place them back on shelves without the awkward grab and drag mechanic that usually results in knocking over 3 more things. You can rotate the item, position it, and gently release it. You become an arcane interior decorator. There is also a defensive utility that requires immense skill or luck. You can technically catch arrows. If a bandit shoots at you and you time your cast perfectly, you can grab the arrow in mid-flight. It is incredibly difficult to pull off reliably, and usually results in you just getting shot in the face while waving your hand, but when it happens, it is the coolest moment in your gaming career. You feel like a movie protagonist. You hold the arrow, then fling it back. It likely does 2 damage, but the psychological victory is total. The spell also highlights the quirks of the Havoc physics engine. Sometimes grabbing an item causes it to freak out. It vibrates violently, spazzing against the geometry of the room before launching itself at max speed into a wall. This poltergeist effect can actually kill NPCs if the object hits them at high velocity, though it's unpredictable. It turns a quiet looting session into a chaotic scene of flying crockery and panicked chickens. But let's return to the looter's tool aspect. For the collector of unique items, telekinesis is essential. There are items in the game placed in out-of-bounds areas or behind invisible walls that are meant to be decorative. With telekinesis, you can sometimes snag them. You can grab the unreachable potions on high shelves in the Archmage's quarters. You can pull items through the bars of a jail cell. It breaks the intended sequence of the level design in a way that feels rewarding. The developers put a wall there. You used magic to say no. As the Dragonborn stands in the market, holding a pumpkin with their mind, leveling up for the 5th time that day, they realise that alteration is about more than just armour spells. It is about utility. It is about making the world convenient. Why walk when you can drag the world to you? Yet for all this mastery over physical objects, there is a limit. You can move a cup, but you cannot move a corpse, at least not easily. You can manipulate the living world, but the dead are heavy. And sometimes, in the deep dark of a Nordic ruin, the dead don't stay dead. They hide. They wait in alcoves, indistinguishable from the clutter. Away until you walk past. You need a way to see them before they see you. You need to look beyond the physical, beyond the visible spectrum. You need to see the heat of life, or the lack thereof. You need to strip away the shadows and reveal the souls lurking within. The Dragonborn drops the pumpkin. The purple light fades. They raise their hands again, and this time the world shifts. The colours drain away. The stone walls become grey and transparent. The darkness becomes light. And there, through 3 feet of solid rock, a glowing orange shape is waiting. The Dragonborn crouches in the damp, claustrophobic tunnel of a Nordic burial cairn. The air is thick with the scent of dried moss and ancient decay. Every shadow looks like a threat. Every creak of the settling stone sounds like a footstep. We have all been there, creeping past a row of vertical sarcophagi, holding our breath, praying that the withered corpses inside are just set dressing and not levelled Draugr deathlords waiting to shout us into the ceiling. It is a tension unique to Skyrim's dungeon design, a constant low-level anxiety that turns every room into a gamble. But the Master Alteration Mage does not gamble. They do not guess. They simply open their eyes to a different spectrum of reality. The Dragonborn raises a hand, and the world undergoes a radical shift. The vibrant, earthy textures of the dungeon, the grey stone, the brown roots, the rusted iron, are instantly desaturated. The screen washes out into a monochromatic haze of slate and charcoal. The walls become semi-transparent, ghost-like layers of geometry. And there, glowing with a pulsating, sickly orange-red light through 3 feet of solid granite, is the enemy. This is Detect Dead. This spell is the dungeon crawler's X-ray. It is the ultimate answer to the ambush mechanics Bethesda loves so much. While the warrior walks blindly into the trap, and the thief relies on the sneak eye reticle to open slightly, the Alteration Mage sees the battlefield with perfect clarity before they even open the door. The visual feedback of Detect Dead is arguably the most distinct in the game, and it provides our core in-game fact for this section. The spell visually differentiates between active, undead, and inert corpses. When you cast it, the Draugr that is scripted to wake up and attack you glows in a vibrant, hostile orange or red, depending on your ENB or version. The Draugr that is simply a dead body containing 3 gold and a bone meal glows in a soft, passive white or pale blue. This distinction is absolute. It completely nullifies the sleeping Draugr trap. You can walk into a room with 20 bodies, cast the spell, and instantly know that 18 are loot containers and 2 are threats. You can then preemptively put an arrow in the glowing orange ones before they even finish their waking up animation. You aren't fighting, you're exterminating. This transforms the genre of the game. Skyrim, especially in the early levels or on legendary difficulty, is often a survival horror game. You're weak, the enemies are scary, and the lighting is dark. Detect Dead turns it into a tactical SWAT breach. You stack up on the door, You scan the room. 2 hostiles on the left, 1 on the right. You formulate a plan, you execute. The fear evaporates because the unknown is removed. You're no longer reacting to jump scares, you're hunting the monsters. Mechanically, the spell has a massive range, far larger than most players realise. Inside a dungeon, it can often show you enemies in the next room, the room below you, and sometimes even the boss at the end of the hall if the level geometry is compact enough. It allows you to track the patrol paths of vampires without ever entering their line of sight. It is the magical equivalent of a wallhack cheat, but sanctioned by the College of Winterhold. However, there is a fascinating bit of obscure lore attached to this spell regarding its classification. Veterans of the Elder Scrolls series will remember that in Morrowind and Oblivion, detection spells belong to the school of mysticism. Mysticism was the school of soul manipulation, teleportation, and divining the unseen. In the 4th era, Skyrim's timeline, the school of mysticism was dissolved by the Synod and the College of Whispers, and its spells were redistributed. Detect Dead was shoved into alteration. This reclassification has sparked deep theological debates in the lore community. Why alteration? Destruction breaks the world, illusion hides it, alteration changes it. How does seeing change the world? The text, The Old Ways by the Sigic Order, suggests that by perceiving the true forces of the world, one is essentially altering their own relationship to reality. You aren't changing the wall to be transparent, you're altering your own eyes to perceive the magicka that flows through the dead. You're tuning your brain to a different frequency, one that the dead transmit on. It implies that the dead are never truly gone in Tamriel, they're just on a different channel. There is also a significant community debate regarding the utility of Detect Dead versus the Shout Aura Whisper. The Stealth Archer faction argues that Aura Whisper is superior because it costs no magicka, lasts longer, and highlights all entities, living, dead, and constructs. They say Detect Dead is a waste of a hand slot. But the mages retort with the issue of cooldown. A shout has a recovery time. Detect Dead is continuous. You can flicker it on and off rapidly, pulse scanning, to keep track of moving targets without committing to a full cast. It allows for real-time updates. Furthermore, Detect Dead has a utility that Aura Whisper lacks, forensic looting. We have all had that moment after a massive, chaotic battle, perhaps one involving a fireball explosion or a Fusro Day off a cliff, where we know there is a body somewhere in the tall grass with an enchanted glass sword, but we can't find it. The corpse has clipped into a bush or slid under a rock. Aura Whisper doesn't highlight dead bodies that are just containers, it only highlights things with a soul or animus. Detect Dead highlights every corpse in white light. It makes finding the loot in the aftermath of a messy fight trivial. It turns you into a crime scene investigator, ensuring that no septum is left behind. The sound design of Detect Dead is subtle but evocative. It isn't a loud boom or a sharp crack, it's a whoosh, like air being sucked out of a room followed by a low ethereal drone. It sounds like being underwater. It isolates you. When you hold the spell, the ambient noise of the dungeon, the dripping water, the wind, seems to dampen slightly, focusing your attention on the glowing forms. It creates a flow state for the player. However, the spell has a glaring weakness that acts as a hard counter. Dwemer automatons. Dwarven spiders, spheres, and centurions are neither alive nor dead. They are machines. They do not glow with Detect Life, and they do not glow with Detect Dead. They are invisible to your magical sight. This creates a terrifying blind spot for the Alteration Mage. You can scan a Dwemer ruin, see nothing, walk in confidently, and get decapitated by a spinning blade trap or a steam centurion that was standing perfectly still. It forces you to rely on your mundane senses again, jarring you out of your magical supremacy. It is a brilliant bit of balancing that keeps the player from becoming too complacent, but against the undead, the primary antagonist of Skyrim's main quest, and the majority of its dungeons, it is a godsend. It works on vampires too. In fact, it is a fantastic tool for vampire hunting in cities. If you suspect a citizen is a vampire in disguise, though game mechanics usually keep them hidden until they transform. Casting Detect Dead in a crowd can sometimes reveal interesting things about who registers as dead. There is a specific satisfying rhythm to using this spell with a bow or a long-range spell. You stand at the top of a staircase, you cast Detect Dead. You see the glowing red silhouette of a Draugr standing around the corner at the bottom. You draw your bow, You pre-aim at the corner, you wait. The silhouette moves. As soon as the red pixels cross the threshold of the wall, you loose the arrow. The target drops. You never even saw their face. It is a cold, detached, and incredibly efficient way to clear a dungeon. The spell also highlights ash piles. If you are a mage who uses lightning magic or the raise zombie spells that disintegrate bodies, the floor can quickly become a mess of grey ash piles that are hard to see. Detect Dead makes them glow bright white. It ensures you don't miss the loot from the enemy you just disintegrated. It cleans up the battlefield. As the Dragonborn moves through the crypt, the white shapes of looting opportunities fade, and the orange shapes of threats are extinguished one by one. The dungeon is silent. The X-ray vision has done its job. The path is clear. But sometimes seeing the enemy isn't enough. Sometimes the enemy is too strong, or there are too many of them. Sometimes you are in Solstheim, and the enemies aren't just Draugr. They are ash spawn, creatures born of the Red Mountain's rage, resilient and relentless. You don't need to see them, you need to stop them. You need to hold them in place so you can think, or perhaps so you can run. You need a spell that doesn't just alter your vision, but alters the very ground the enemy walks on. You need to turn the air into sediment. You need to visit the Telvanni wizards and learn the art of encasing your foes in a tomb of their own making. The Dragonborn looks at the charging ash spawn, raises a hand, and prepares to bury it before it even dies. The air changes as the Dragonborn steps off the boat at Raven Rock. The crisp, pine-scented breeze of Skyrim is replaced by a dry, choking wind that tastes of sulphur and ancient dust. The sky is a bruised purple, dominated by the smoking silhouette of Red Mountain on the horizon. This is Solstheim, a land where the earth itself is hostile, where the water burns, and where the local wildlife has evolved to kill you in creative and horrifying ways. It is here, amidst the giant mushroom towers of Tel Mithryn, that we find a spell that perfectly encapsulates the Dunmer philosophy of survival. If you cannot kill it immediately, simply make it part of the scenery. We are talking about Ash Shell. To obtain this spell, one must endure the company of Master Neloth, a Telvanni wizard whose arrogance is matched only by his genuine brilliance. He treats the Dragonborn less like a prophesied hero and more like a slightly dim-witted lab assistant. But after enough fetch quests involving heartstones and fungal spores, he allows you to purchase this peculiar alteration spell. At first glance, it seems like a worse version of Paralyze. It freezes an enemy in place, but read the fine print. Targets that fail to resist are immobilized in hardened ash for 30 seconds. While the shell is active, the target cannot be damaged. That last sentence is what makes most players scoff. Cannot be damaged? In a game about killing things, why would you want a spell that protects your enemy? Why would you wrap a bandit in a suit of impenetrable armour? Here is the genius of Ash Shell, and our core in-game fact for the evening. The spell does not act as a combat opener. It acts as a pause button for the game's difficulty. Unlike Paralyze, which has a chance to fail based on the enemy's level and magic resistance, Ash Shell ignores the standard level caps of illusion spells like Pacify or Fear. It works on almost anything that isn't a dragon or a massive boss script. This means when you are fighting a bandit chief and 3 of his minions, you can cast Ash Shell on the chief. He is instantly encased in a grey, rocky cocoon. He's effectively removed from the game for 30 seconds. You can now kill the 3 minions at your leisure, heal yourself, drink a potion, reload your crossbow, and maybe eat a sweet roll. When the shell breaks, it is a 1 versus 1 fight. You have turned an impossible encounter into 2 manageable ones. This tactical separation is invaluable on higher difficulties. On Legendary, a single power attack from a 2-handed Reaver can execute you. Ash Shell allows you to dictate the terms of engagement. It is the spell of the control freak. You walk into a room, point at the most dangerous enemy and say, "You wait here, I'll deal with you later." And they do. They have no choice. They are statues in your personal gallery of violence. Visually, the spell is stark and unsettling. When the projectile, a glob of grey, viscous magic, hits the target, there is no explosion. There is a rapid, crusting sound like wet concrete drying in a second. The enemy freezes mid-animation. If they were swinging an axe, the axe is stuck in the air, coated in ash. If they were shouting, their mouth is filled with stone. They look like the victims of Pompeii, captured in their final moment of aggression. It is a haunting aesthetic that fits the Morrowind nostalgia perfectly. There is a deep, obscure layer of lore regarding the nature of this ash magic. It isn't just dirt. According to Telvanni research notes and dialogues with Neloth's apprentice, Talvas Fathrion, this magic manipulates the Heartstones, fragments of red lyrium-like ore that were flung from Red Mountain during its eruption. These stones are imbued with the energy of Lorkhan's heart, the very thing that made the tribunal gods. By casting Ash Shell, you're essentially weaponizing the trauma of the land. You're encasing your enemy in the fallout of a dead god. It is a form of geological necromancy, using the ashes of the past to bind the present. This brings us to the inevitable community debate: Ash Shell versus Paralyze. The Paralyze purists argue that Paralyze is superior because you can hit the enemy while they are down. You can paralyze a giant and then chop at his ankles until he dies. It is efficient, it is aggressive, but the Ash Shell apologists argue that Paralyze is expensive, expert level, and has a shorter duration, usually 10 to 15 seconds. Ash Shell is cheaper, alteration level 40 to 50 range, lasts significantly longer, 30 seconds, and, crucially, doesn't cause the physics engine to freak out. We've all paralysed an enemy on a slope and watched them slide down the mountain at 60 miles per hour, never to be seen again. Ash Shell keeps them right where you want them. It is reliable. There is also the troll factor. Ash Shell allows for some of the funniest non-lethal griefing in the game. You can cast it on Nazim in the middle of the Whiterun market. He becomes a statue. The guards don't attack you, usually if you're hidden or have a high enough disposition. The townspeople just walk around him. Do you get to the Cloud District often? No, Nazim, because you are currently a rock. It wears off, he is confused but unharmed. It creates a moment of slapstick comedy in a grim world. The spell also has a unique interaction with full damage, or rather, the prevention of it. If you cast Ash Shell on an enemy, or a follower if you are quick and mean, who is falling, they become an invulnerable rock. They hit the ground, take 0 damage, and then the shell breaks. It is a niche use, but some creative players have used it to save essential NPCs who have been launched by giants or dragons. It's a rescue mission encased in dirt. However, the invulnerability aspect does have a major strategic downside that frustrates new users. You cannot stack damage. You cannot cast a fire rune under an ash-shelled enemy and expect it to explode while they are shelled. The shell protects them from everything. You have to time your setup perfectly. You place the rune under the statue, then wait. You stand there, weapon drawn, counting down the seconds. 3, 2, 1, crack. The shell crumbles. The enemy takes a breath. Boom! The rune triggers. It requires patience. It turns combat into a cooking timer. Let's talk about the sound design again. The breaking of the shell is arguably more satisfying than the forming. It sounds like a heavy ceramic pot being smashed. Crash. Dust flies everywhere. The enemy stumbles. You are disoriented for a fraction of a second as the game engine re-enables their AI. That split second is your window. You can time a power attack to land exactly as the shell breaks. It requires rhythm. Cast, wait, charge, attack, smash. It feels professional. There is a specific synergy with the Azidal equipment set found in Colbion Barrow. While Ash Shell is an alteration spell, its thematic cousin is the destruction magic of the Ash. Wearing Azidal's Ring of Arcana allows you to cast Ignite, which we will discuss shortly, and Freeze. But the Ash Shell sits in the middle of this elemental chaos as the stabilizer. It is the eye of the storm. Consider the roleplay implications of a Telvanni wizard build. You are not a brute. You do not run around swinging a hammer. You are a scholar. When a bandit attacks you, you don't dignify them with a duel. You put them in timeout. You encase them in ash and proceed to loot the chest they were guarding while they watch, helpless and grey. Then, when you're done, you leave. The shell wears off, and the bandit is left alone in an empty room wondering if he hallucinated the entire encounter. It is the ultimate power move. But the most harrowing use of Ash Shell is on the Ash Spawn themselves. These creatures rise from the ground, glowing with volcanic heat. They are relentless. Casting Ash Shell on an Ash Spawn feels poetic. You are returning them to the earth. You are forcing the animated ash back into a dormant state. For 30 seconds, the screaming stops. The burning stops. There is just a silent grey form standing in the wasteland. It is a moment of peace in a land that knows only fire. The Dragonborn stands amidst the swirling dust of the Solstheim wastes. The Reaver Lord encased in his grey tomb is silent. The wind howls around the statue. The Dragonborn takes a deep breath, checking their magicka reserves. The fight is paused, but it is not over. When the shell breaks, the Reaver will be angry. He will be at full health. The ash shell didn't hurt him, it just delayed the inevitable. To truly defeat him without risking a close-quarters brawl, the Dragonborn needs something more insidious. Something that doesn't just stop the enemy, but eats them from the inside out. Something that burns not with the explosive force of a fireball, but with the slow, agonizing heat of a fever. The Dragonborn looks at the ring on their finger, a ring dug up from the ruins of a dragon priest who went mad with power. The inscription glows with a faint, menacing light. It offers a spell that stacks, a spell that lingers, a spell that turns a single spark into an inferno. The island of Solstheim is a graveyard of ambitions. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the ash-covered depression of Kolbjorn Barrow. Unlike other dungeons where you simply walk in and kill things, this one demands your wallet before it demands your sword. You meet a Dunmer named Rallis Sedaris, a man with a pickaxe and a dream, who asks for an investment. You give him gold. He digs. He sends a courier to tell you the Draugr woke up and killed everyone. You go in, clear the Draugr, and he asks for more gold. This cycle repeats 4 times. By the end, you have sunk 11,000 gold pieces into a hole in the ground. Most players resent this. They call it a scam. But the wise adventurer knows that Rallis isn't digging for gold. He's digging for the relics of Azidal, the greatest enchanter who ever lived. And at the bottom of that money pit, resting on a dusty podium in a room that smells of ancient magic and fresh blood, is a ring. It is not a spell tome. You cannot learn this magic permanently and cast it naked. Well, you can, but you need the ring. This is Azidal's Ring of Arcana. When you equip it, 2 new spells appear in your destruction menu, Freeze and Ignite. We're here to talk about the latter. To the casual observer, Ignite looks pathetic. The description reads, blasts the target with fire that does 4 damage per second for 15 seconds. 4 damage. A stiff breeze deals more damage than that. A wooden sword deals more damage. Why would anyone use a ring slot and magicka for a spell that ticks for single digits? Players usually equip the ring, cast the spell once on a mudcrab, see the tiny sliver of health move, and immediately throw the ring into a chest never to be seen again. But they are missing the single most broken mechanic in the entire destruction school. Here is our core in-game fact. Ignite is the only destruction spell in the game where the damage over time DOT effect stacks with itself infinitely. If you cast a fireball, the explosion deals damage, and the burning effect applies a small DOT. If you cast another fireball immediately, the new burning effect simply overwrites the old one. It refreshes the timer, it doesn't add to the intensity. Ignite is different. If you cast Ignite on an enemy, they take 4 damage per second. If you cast it again 1 second later, they take 8 damage per second. And if you dual cast it 10 times in 5 seconds, which is easy because the cast time is instantaneous, the enemy is now taking 40 damage per second for the next 15 seconds. Now, add the perks. This is where the math gets terrifying. If you have the Augmented Flames perks, 2 out of 2, that 4 damage becomes 6. If you wear Azidal's Mask, which increases fire damage by 25%, it goes up again. But the real secret, the obscure lore of game mechanics, lies in the Illusion School. The perk aspect of Terror in the Illusion Tree boosts fear spells. Due to a coding quirk in the base game, fire spells are tagged with a fear component, likely to make low-level enemies flee when burning. Therefore, Aspect of Terror adds a flat plus 10 damage to fire spells. On a fireball doing 50 damage, plus 10 is nice. On Ignite doing 4 damage, plus 10 is a 250% increase. Suddenly, your weak spell is ticking for 15 to 20 damage per second per stack. Stack that 10 times, you're dealing 200 damage per second. That is more DPS than a legendary Daedric greatsword swung by a chemically enhanced orc, and you are doing it from a distance, with a projectile that costs almost no magicka. This realization changes how you fight dragons. Usually, fighting a legendary dragon involves a lot of running, hiding and chugging potions while waiting for an opening to strike. With Ignite, you become a pest. You stand in the open, you spam the spell, hiss, 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 tagging the dragon 20 times before it even lands. Then you hide. You watch the dragon's health bar. It doesn't chunk down. It melts. It slides to the left smoothly and rapidly, like ice on a hot skillet. The dragon takes off, flies around, roars, and then simply falls out of the sky, dead from a heart attack induced by 1,000 tiny fires. The visual and sound design of Ignite reinforces this insidious killer theme. It doesn't sound like a cannon. It sounds like a gas leak. It's a sharp, high-pressure thwip noise. The projectile is a thin, concentrated stream of orange light, more like a laser than a ball of fire. When it hits, it doesn't explode. It just sinks into the enemy. The target glows with a fierce internal heat. It looks painful. It looks like their blood is boiling. It fits the lore of Azadal perfectly. Speaking of Azadal, his story is one of the darkest in Skyrim's history. He was a Nord enchanter in the Merethic era, who was so obsessed with mastering magic that he left his people to learn from the elves, the Aelids, the Folmer, the Chimer. He returned to find his home destroyed by the Snow Elves, the Night of Tears. In his grief and rage, he turned to the Dragon Priest for power, but even that wasn't enough. He sought the knowledge of Oblivion. He delved into chaos magic. The Ring of Arcana is a manifestation of his philosophy. Magic shouldn't just be a blunt instrument, it should be a consuming force. Ignite isn't about the initial impact, it's about the lingering consequence. It's a spell that says, I have touched you, and now you will die, even if I walk away. Community debates often pit Ignite against Incinerate. Incinerate is the expert-level fire spell. It deals massive burst damage, 60 to 90 per hit. It looks cool, a giant lance of blue-hot flame. The big number crowd loves it. They want to see the enemy's health bar disappear in chunks. They argue that Ignite takes too long to kill. Why wait 15 seconds when I can kill him in 2? But the Ignite strategists argue for efficiency. Incinerate costs a fortune in Magicka. You can cast maybe 5 or 6 before running dry. Ignite costs pennies. You can cast it all day. Against a boss with massive health pools like Karstag or the Ebony Warrior, Incinerate runs out of steam. Ignite just keeps stacking. It is the tortoise and the hare, if the tortoise was also on fire. There is also a psychological element to using this spell. It feels cruel. When you hit a bandit with a warhammer, it's over. Clean. When you stack Ignite on a bandit, you can stop attacking and just watch them run around, screaming, burning to death while you loot their chest. It turns the Dragonborn into a sadist. You're essentially poisoning them with heat. The spell also has fantastic synergy with the impact perk. If you dual cast Ignite, it staggers the enemy. Because the cast time is so fast, you can stagger lock an opponent indefinitely. They can't move. They can't attack. They just stand there jerking backwards every half second while the fire builds up inside them. It is widely considered cheese by the hardcore community. But if the game lets you do it, is it really cheating? Or is it just superior wizardry? One of the most satisfying uses of Ignite is on trolls. Trolls have high health regeneration. If you stop hitting them, they heal. Ignite's constant damage ticks counteract the regeneration perfectly. It suppresses their natural advantage. The troll burns faster than it can heal. It turns a frustrating enemy into a campfire. However, the ring mechanic is a limitation. You have to wear the ring. This means giving up a slot that could be used for fortified destruction or magic resistance. You are sacrificing defense or utility for this specific offense. It forces a build choice. You are the Azadal Mage. You wear his armor, his mask, his ring. You become his successor. The quest to get the ring, unearthed, is also a test of patience. You have to wait days for the courier. You have to leave Solstheim and come back. It builds anticipation. By the time you finally face Rallis or spare him, you feel like you've earned this power. You paid for it in gold and time. As the Dragonborn stands over the charred remains of a lurker, the ring of Arcana cool on their finger, the fires of Ignite finally fade from the corpse. The Magicka bar is still nearly full. The efficiency is undeniable. You have conquered the elements of destruction. You have mastered the art of the slow burn. But not every fight needs to end in death. Not every enemy deserves to burn. Sometimes the Dragonborn is tired. Sometimes you just want to walk through a bandit camp to get to the treasure without having to slaughter 20 people who are just trying to survive in a harsh economic climate. Sometimes you want to be a diplomat, but a diplomat with the power of a god. You need a spell that forces the world to love you, or at least to stop trying to kill you for 5 minutes. You need to reach into the minds of your enemies and flip the switch that says aggression to apathy. You need the ultimate calm down button. The Dragonborn unequips the ring, the orange glow fading, and raises a hand wreathed in the soothing, hypnotic green of high-level illusion. The bandits are charging, weapons drawn, screaming for blood. The Dragonborn does not flinch, they simply wave a hand. The charging bandits are 10 feet away. Their faces are contorted with the specific, desperate rage of men who live in caves and eat grilled leeks for every meal. The steel of their axes catches the dungeon torchlight. The Dragonborn does not draw a weapon. There is no shout, no explosion of fire, no summoning of a Daedric tank. Instead, a wave of sickly, iridescent green energy washes over the room like a sudden heavy fog. It expands outward from the caster's hand, passing through flesh and armour alike, soaking into the very minds of the attackers. And then silence. The axes lower. The screaming stops mid-syllable. The bandit chief, who a moment ago was ready to cleave the Dragonborn's skull in two, blinks his eyes, sheathes his weapon with a casual clack and looks at the intruder. "Need something?" he asks. His voice devoid of malice, replaced by the generic, slightly bored tone of a town guard. This is Pacify. It is the expert-level illusion spell that turns the Dragonborn into the ultimate diplomat, provided your definition of diplomacy involves chemically altering the brain chemistry of your opposition against their will. To the uninitiated, illusion magic seems weak because it doesn't deal damage. A fireball solves a problem permanently. A Pacify spell only solves it for 60 seconds, but the true master knows that 60 seconds is an eternity in combat. It is enough time to heal. It is enough time to loot the chest the bandit was guarding. It is enough time to walk behind the bandit, crouch, and deliver a sneak attack for 30 times normal damage. Or for the merciful, it is enough time to simply walk away. Here is the core in-game fact that elevates Pacify from a novelty to a god-tier ability. The spell effectively performs a soft reset on the enemy's AI state, regarding detection and hostility. If you are detected while sneaking and the entire dungeon is alerted, casting a high-level Pacify, often dual cast to break the level cap, instantly forces everyone back into a neutral state. They don't just stop attacking, they forget why they were attacking. You can stand right in front of them, pick their pocket, fail, have them draw their weapon, cast Pacify again, and have them sheath it. You are trapping them in a loop of amnesia. You are gaslighting the entire dungeon. This mechanic fundamentally breaks the stealth genre of the game. Usually stealth is a binary state. You're hidden or you're found. Once found, you must fight or flee. Pacify introduces a third state. You're found, but it doesn't matter. You can walk through the Thalmor embassy in broad daylight, waving at the guards, casting Pacify on anyone who looks at you funny. You become a tourist in a forbidden zone. The tension of stealth evaporates, replaced by the giddy power trip of knowing you are untouchable, not because of your armour, but because you control their perception of reality. The visual design of the spell is distinct. Unlike the angry red of fury or the blue of fear, Pacify is a soothing, almost oily green. It coats the enemies in a shader that looks like tranquility, or perhaps sickness. The sound design complements this beautifully. The cast sound is a soft whoosh, followed by a shimmering chimes-like effect that hangs in the air. It sounds magical in the truest sense, unnatural, ethereal, and pervasive. It is the sound of a spell that doesn't break bones but rewires neurons. However, there is a dark ethical shadow cast by this spell, explored in the obscure lore text incident at Necrom. The book describes an illusionist who used calm spells to stop a riot, but the moral implications are debated. Is it better to kill a man in self-defense, or to strip him of his free will and force him to be your friend? When you cast Pacify, you're violating the sanctity of the target's mind. You're overriding their natural instincts, fear, anger, survival, and replacing them with an artificial complacency. The bandit isn't choosing to stop fighting. He is physically unable to want to fight. He is a puppet. This leads to a fascinating community debate regarding pacifist runs. Many players attempt to beat Skyrim without killing anyone, or as few people as possible. Pacify is the cornerstone of this playstyle. You calm the enemies, grab the quest item, and leave. Technically, your people killed stat remains 0. But the true pacifist critics argue that leaving a bandit alive but mentally violated is a fate worse than Sovngarde. Furthermore, once the spell wears off, the bandit returns to their default state of aggression. You haven't solved the problem of banditry in Skyrim, you've just delayed it. You walked past them, but the next traveller won't have your magic. You saved yourself, not the world. There is also the Illusion Assassin build, which is arguably the most sadistic way to play the game. You walk into a room. You pacify everyone. They sheathe their weapons and go back to eating bread or leaning on walls. You walk up to one, slit their throat. The others watch. They do nothing because they are pacified. You kill the next one, and the next. It turns the Dragonborn into a horror movie villain. A silent reaper who walks among victims who are too magically sedated to scream. It creates a dissonance between the peaceful music and the absolute carnage on screen. Strategically, Pacify has a massive radius. This is crucial. Unlike the single target calm spells of lower levels, Pacify is an explosion of peace. If you are fighting a boss who has summoned minions, hitting the boss with Pacify often hits the minions too. The entire room just stops. The clamour of battle, the shouting, the clashing steel, the explosions, cuts out instantly. It is jarring. It feels like someone pulled the plug on the chaos. The spell also has a unique interaction with guards. If you have a low bounty, the kind where guards try to arrest you but don't kill on sight, Pacify can sometimes glitch the arrest dialogue. You cast it, talk to the guard, and he just says, "Citizenship has its privileges," and walks away. You have Jedi mind tricked your way out of a crime. However, if your bounty is high, the spell might only work for the duration, and as soon as it fades, the guard remembers he's supposed to kill you. It creates a tense game of red light, green light with the lore. Let's not forget the synergy with the Master of the Mind perk. Without this perk, illusion spells only work on people and animals. With it, Pacify works on Draugr and automatons. This is where the visual comedy peaks. You cast Pacify on a Draugr Deathlord. This ancient, rotting Nord zombie, driven by thousands of years of hatred for the living, simply stops, puts away his ebony sword, and stands there breathing heavily, which is impressive for a corpse. He might even say a line of dialogue if the game bugs out, something generic like, "Need something," in a rasping voice. It completely demystifies the undead. They aren't monsters, they're just grumpy old men who need a nap. There is a specific joy in using Pacify on animals. A bear charges you in the rift. You cast Pacify. The bear stops, sits down and looks at you. You can walk right up to it. You can admire the texture work on its fur. For a moment you're a Disney princess, surrounded by woodland creatures that aren't trying to maul you. Then the spell wears off, and you have to run. But for those 60 seconds, you are one with nature. But the most powerful use of Pacify is in escort quests. We all know the pain of trying to keep an NPC alive, Esbern, Barbas, or some random farmer. They have a death wish. They charge into battle against giants. Pacify solves this. You cast it on the enemies. The enemies stop attacking. Your idiot escort NPC stops attacking because there are no hostile targets. Everyone just chills out. You walk your VIP to the destination through a literal war zone that has been forced into a ceasefire. It is the only reliable way to save NPCs who seem determined to die. The Dragonborn stands in the centre of the bandit camp. The chief is leaning on his table, drinking mead. His men are sitting by the fire. The Dragonborn loots the chest, taking the gold, the gems, and the quest item. No one stops them. It is the ultimate heist. As the Dragonborn walks to the exit, the green haze begins to flicker. The spell is ending. The aggression is returning. You step out into the cool night air just as the shouting resumes inside. Where did he go? Kill him! But you're already gone. You have won without drawing a blade. You have conquered through sheer force of personality and magicka. But sometimes, the enemies you face aren't people. They aren't animals. They aren't even undead. They are things that do not belong in this world at all. They are intruders from the plains of oblivion, Atronachs, Dremora, seekers of forbidden knowledge. You cannot reason with a chunk of sentient fire. You cannot soothe the mind of a creature that is pure, chaotic energy. You don't need to calm them. You don't need to kill them. You need to send them back. You need to evoke the ancient compacts that bind the realms together and forcefully evict them from Mundus. The Dragonborn looks at the flame Atronach blocking the path ahead. It floats, crackling with heat, a mockery of the natural order. The Dragonborn doesn't cast a frost spell to extinguish it. They raise a hand charged with the geometric binding light of conjuration. It is time to enforce the borders of reality. It is time to banish. the flame Atronach hovers before you, a vaguely feminine figure composed of jagged floating rocks held together by a core of raging fire. It raises a limb, preparing to lob a fireball that will inevitably set you on fire and obscure your vision with that annoying screen-edge burning effect. A warrior would raise a shield, a destruction mage would cast frostbite. But the Conjuration Master, they simply snap. Well, not literally a snap, but the effect of the spell Banish Daedra is so immediate, so dismissive that it feels like one. You cast a projectile of pure binding energy. It hits the Atronach. There is no explosion, no health bar whittling down. The creature simply implodes. One moment it is there, a threat to your life and eyebrows. The next, there is a wet thwurp sound, a flash of purple light and empty air. This is the Oblivion Gatekeeper's snap. It is the hard counter to every necromancer, vampire and rogue mage in Skyrim who thinks they can hide behind summoned help. Most players know the word banish, not from the spell tome, but from the enchantment table. This brings us to our core in-game fact regarding the economy of Skyrim. The banish weapon enchantment is mechanically the most valuable enchantment in the game for crafting. If you find a bow of banishing at level 22, you have struck gold. You can disenchant it, apply it to a cheap iron dagger using a petty soul gem, and sell that dagger for hundreds, sometimes thousands of gold. It is the backbone of the Merchant Lord playthrough. It is how you buy Solitude's Proudspire mana. But the spell itself, the actual act of casting Banish Daedra from your hand, is criminally overlooked in combat. Why? Because players assume it is too niche. How often do I fight Daedra, they ask. The answer is constantly. Every enemy conjurer summons a flame or frost Atronach. Every vampire summons gargoyles, which interestingly are often flagged as Daedra in the code, or at least interact with Banish Mechanics depending on patches/mods, though usually Banish targets Atronach specifically. And high-level mages summon Storm Atronachs. A Storm Atronach is a tank. It has high health, shoots lightning that drains your magicka, and melee attacks that stagger you. To kill it with a sword takes time. To kill it with destruction magic takes a lot of mana. Banish Daedra removes it instantly. It is a one-shot kill that bypasses health, armor, and resistance. It checks one thing: is the target a summoned Daedra within the level cap? Up to level 15 for the base spell, higher for Expel Daedra. If yes, goodbye. The visual feedback is incredibly satisfying. Unlike the destruction of a physical body, where the ragdoll physics might glitch out and spaz across the floor, a Banished Daedra leaves no corpse. It leaves no ash pile, unless you have specific perks or mods. It is a clean deletion. It feels like you are correcting a mistake in the universe. The summoner pulled something into Mundus that didn't belong. You put it back. Lore-wise, this spell touches on the metaphysical mechanics of the liminal barriers. According to the dense and often headache-inducing text, The Doors of Oblivion, your summoning is the act of forcing a door open between the mortal plane, Mundus, and a plane of oblivion, like the Deadlands or Cold Harbour. The summoner acts as an anchor, holding that door open with their magicka and will. Banish Daedra essentially severs that anchor. You aren't hurting the Daedra, you're slamming the door in its face. You're cutting the Wi-Fi signal, and the avatar glitches out. There is a grim implication here for the Daedra. While they cannot die in the mortal sense, their vestige simply returns to the waters of oblivion to reform. The process is described as painful and disorienting. Being banished is a violent rejection. You're forcefully ejecting a sentient being from reality. It adds a layer of cosmic horror to the mage's toolkit. You aren't just fighting enemies. Rather, you are policing the boundaries of dimension. The community debate around this spell often centres on Banish versus Command. The Conjuration tree offers another path: Command Daedra. This spell turns the enemy's summon against them. Why banish the Storm Atronach when you can steal it and have it kill its master? It's a valid argument. Command Daedra is objectively more chaotic and fun, but Banish Daedra is about efficiency. Commanding a Daedra takes time. The spell has a travel time, and the AI has to realise it's switched sides. Banishing it removes the threat now. It is the difference between a messy divorce and a clean break. Command Daedra is the messy divorce where you fight over the dog. Banish Daedra is changing the locks and moving on. Furthermore, there is a specific, high-level interaction with the Expel Daedra spell, the expert version. This spell works on much powerful Daedra, including Dremora Lords, If you're fighting a high-level warlock who summons a Dremora Lord, one of the most dangerous melee enemies in the game, you can just wave your hand and send him home. The warlock, suddenly alone and squishy, usually panics. It exposes the fragility of the summoner archetype. Without their meat shields, they are nothing. However, the spell has a major limitation. It does absolutely nothing against non-Daedra. It is useless against bandits, dragons, Dwemer machines, or the undead, though Turn Undead is the restoration equivalent. This makes it a dead card in your hand for 80% of the game. You have to menu swap to it specifically when you see a purple portal opening. This friction, the need to react and switch spells, is why many players drop it. They prefer spells that work on everything, like Fireball, but for the prepared mage, the Witch Hunter class, it is essential. Imagine the Thalmor Embassy quest. You are fighting elven wizards who love to summon Storm Atronachs. You have limited gear, but if you have learned Banish Daedra, you can trivialize the hardest hitters in the room. You turn their greatest asset into a waste of magicka. The sound design deserves a mention. The casting sound is a sharp electric zing, followed by a vacuum-like schwump when the Daedra disappears. It sounds like a sci-fi teleporter. It contrasts sharply with the earthy, gritty sounds of steel clashing on shields. It emphasizes that this is high magic. This is academic magic. There is also a fun little economy exploit, or rather a feature, involving this spell and your own summons. If you summon a Daedra and then banish it yourself, you gain experience for both casting the summon and the banish, if you're in combat or meet certain conditions. It's a way to grind conjuration without hurting anyone, though it's less efficient than the Soul Trap Corpse method. But roleplay-wise, it looks like you are practicing your tennis serve. Summon, banish, summon, banish. One of the most satisfying moments in Skyrim is interrupting a summoning script. Sometimes a boss battle begins with the villain monologuing while summoning a giant guardian. If you are quick, you can banish the guardian the second it spawns. The villain continues their speech. Destroy him, my minion, and gestures to empty air. It breaks the drama beautifully. It makes the villain look incompetent. The spell also highlights the difference between bound weapons and summoned creatures. As we discussed earlier, bound weapons are Daedra. Does Banish Daedra work on an enemy's bound sword? Sadly no. The game engine treats bound weapons as equipment, not entities. It would be hilarious if you could banish an enemy's sword mid-swing, leaving them punching air, but alas, the mechanics don't support that level of disrespect. However, it does work on the Seekers in Apocrypha, the realm of Hermaeus Mora in the Dragonborn DLC. These floating, tentacled librarians are annoying, firing knowledge-draining spells and duplicating themselves. Banish Daedra works on them, usually the clones, sometimes the main one depending on level. Though it makes navigating the endless book corridors much less tedious. You're essentially telling the librarian to go on break. The Dragonborn stands in the ruins of a fort, the smell of ozone fading. The enemy conjurer lies dead, his body looting, providing a few potions and a staff. The Storm Atronach he summoned is gone, returned to the chaotic void. The fight was clean, precise. But as you loot the body, you find a peculiar gem, a warped soul gem, and it reminds you of another quest, one that involves the Dwemer, the deep elves who disappeared without a trace. Their technology still litters Skyrim, humming with steam and tonal architecture. Most of their secrets are lost, but there is one researcher at the College of Winterhold who is obsessed with finding out how they disappeared. His name is Arniel Gain. He is frustrating, secretive, and sends you on errands to collect cogwheels and warped soul gems. But if you stick with him, if you help him recreate the experiment that erased an entire race, he rewards you with a spell that is unique in all of Skyrim. It is a spell that doesn't just burn. It acts as a very specific key to a very specific lock. The Dragonborn looks at the warped gem, feels the heat radiating from it, and prepares to learn a spell that serves no combat purpose for the average player, but for the completionist it is the only way to cook a gemstone. The College of Winterhold is a repository of dangerous knowledge, but usually that danger is overt. Fireballs singe the eyebrows of apprentices, and summoned Daedra occasionally break loose in the midden. But in the back of the Hall of Countenance, ignoring the petty politics of the Archmage succession, works a researcher named Arniel Gain. He is not interested in fighting dragons or saving the world. He is obsessed with a question that has haunted Tamriel for thousands of years. Where did the Dwemer go? And to answer that question, he gives the Dragonborn a spell that is, statistically speaking, the worst destruction magic in history. This is Arniel's Convection. To obtain this spell, you must embark on a fetch quest of epic tedium, Arniel's Endeavour. You collect Dwemer cogs, heavy, useless items that clog your inventory. You fetch a warped soul gem, and eventually Arniel teaches you his personal technique. You open your menu, excited to see what ancient dwarven power you have unlocked. You equip it, you cast it, and a tiny, pathetic stream of fire tickles the air. The spell description is brutal. Burns the target for 1 point of damage per second. 1 damage. A punch does more. A harsh word does more. A sweet roll thrown with sufficient velocity does more. In a game where numbers go up to the hundreds and thousands, 1 is an insult. It is less a weapon and more a heated suggestion. But to dismiss Arniel's Convection as garbage is to misunderstand its purpose. It is not a combat spell. It is a scientific instrument. It is a blowtorch, not a flamethrower. Here is the core in-game fact that makes this spell unique. Arniel's Convection is the only source of fire in the game capable of interacting with Dwemer convection ovens. Scattered across the ruins of Skyrim are these strange bronze heating units. If you place a warped soul gem inside and cast a regular flame spell, nothing happens. If you cast Fireball, the gem flies across the room. But if you channel Arniel's Convection, the oven hums to life. The heat is precise. It cooks the gem, altering its magical resonance to mimic the tonal architecture of the Deep Elves. This interaction is the only time in Skyrim, outside of a lighting oil slicks, where a destruction spell is used as a tool for crafting rather than killing. It suggests a version of the magic system where spells have utility beyond war. Imagine if frost spells could freeze water to create bridges, or shock spells could power Dwemer machinery. Arniel's Convection is a glimpse into that immersive sim version of the game that never quite happened. It is a narrative key disguised as a lousy attack. But the uselessness of the spell in combat has sparked a delightful community subculture. The Convection Challenge. Can you kill a dragon with Arniel's Convection? Yes, if you have 3 hours and the patience of a saint. Because the spell costs 0 magicka to channel, once the initial cost is paid, or if you have minimal cost reduction gear, you can hold it forever. It becomes a test of endurance. It is the death by 1,000 cuts, except it's death by 1,000 mild burns. There is something incredibly disrespectful about killing a legendary foe with a spell designed to heat soup. Lore-wise, the implications of this quest are terrifying. Arniel isn't just baking rocks, he's trying to recreate the event that erased the Dwemer race. He is using keening, one of the legendary tools of Kagranak, the very dagger used to strike the heart of Lorcan. And these treated gems to mimic the divine tone that turned an entire civilization into, well, skin of the Numidium, or perhaps dust, or perhaps gods. The game leaves it ambiguous. By helping him, the Dragonborn is an accomplice to metaphysical recklessness. The quest culminates in one of the most abrupt and darkly funny moments in the game. Arniel sets up his experiment in the college. He strikes the warped soul gem with keening. He shouts, "Work, damn you!" And then, pop. He vanishes. No explosion, no fanfare, just an empty room and a dagger on the floor. He succeeded. He did exactly what the Dwemer did. He deleted himself from reality. However, he didn't completely disappear. The true reward for this quest isn't the Convection spell, but the spell Summon Arniel's Shade. And this shade is a mechanical anomaly. The ghost of Arniel Gain is, for all intents and purposes, invincible. He has no health cap. He takes no damage from most sources. He just walks around, shirtless, for some reason, flinging lightning bolts and punching dragons. He's a testament to the fact that while his Convection spell was weak, his spirit is unbreakable. But back to the Convection spell itself. Visually, it is indistinguishable from the novice Flames spell, which is a bit of a letdown. It uses the same orange spray asset, but the sound is subtler, a lower, steady hiss, lacking the aggressive roar of combat magic. It sounds controlled. It sounds like a Bunsen burner in a lab. There is a niche utility for this spell that creative players have found: Trigger Discipline. Because it does so little damage, it is the perfect spell for triggering rune traps or igniting oil pools without hurting friendly NPCs who might be standing nearby. If you spray a fireball at an oil slick, the explosion radius is huge. If you use convection, you can light the very edge of the oil with surgical precision. It allows for controlled burns. Furthermore, it is an excellent tool for aggro management without commitment. If you want to lure an enemy toward you without damaging them, perhaps to lead them into a trap or to a guard patrol, convection is ideal. It gets their attention. Hey, that's warm, but doesn't take a chunk of their health, ensuring they stay alive long enough to reach the kill zone. It is the poke of the Skyrim world. The quest also highlights the tragic disconnect between the college and the rest of Skyrim. While the Nords are worrying about the Civil War and the return of Alduin, Arniel is in his room trying to break the laws of physics. He doesn't care about the Eye of Magnus. He doesn't care about the Sigic Order. He just wants his rocks to be the right temperature. It grounds the high fantasy in a very relatable academic myopia. There is also a strange interaction with the Augmented Flames perks. Technically, they do boost the damage of Arniel's convection. 1 damage becomes 1.5 damage. It rounds down or up depending on the patch, but the difference is negligible. It highlights the absurdity of the scaling system. You can be the Archmage wearing the Dragon Priest Mask Conoric, wielding the power of the voice, and yet this spell remains stubbornly, hilariously weak. It refuses to be powerful, but perhaps that is the point. The Dwemer didn't disappear because they were weak. They disappeared because they tampered with powers beyond their comprehension, using precise tonal tools. Arniel's convection is the tone that sets the reaction in motion. It doesn't need to be strong, it just needs to be the right frequency. For the completionist, having this spell in the spellbook is a badge of honor. It means you endured the cog collecting. It means you helped a madman disappear. It sits there in the destruction menu right next to the devastating blizzard and the chaotic lightning storm, a humble reminder that not all fire is meant to consume. Some fire is meant to transform. And as the Dragonborn stands in the empty room where Arniel once stood, holding the keening dagger, which ironically kills you if you wield it without the Wraithguard in lore, but in Skyrim just has a nasty debuff, the Convection Spell feels heavy. It is the only trace left of a man's life work. You leave the college, stepping out into the biting wind of Winterhold. The snow crunches under your boots. The mystery of the Dwemer remains unsolved, or perhaps perfectly solved. Depending on your perspective, Arniel is gone, you are still here. But being here in Skyrim is dangerous. The cold saps your stamina. The undead sap your health. The world is constantly trying to drain you. You have learned to burn, to banish, to control, and to hide. But what if you just want to stand your ground? What if you want to create a space where nothing can hurt you, a sanctuary of light in the growing dark? You need the final mastery. You need to turn the very ground beneath your feet into holy land. You need a spell that doesn't just heal the body but repels the grave itself. You need to become a lighthouse in the ocean of the undead. The Dragonborn travels to the one place where restoration is truly respected, the Hall of the Vigilant before it burns down, or perhaps back to Colette Morantz at the college, who insists that restoration is a perfectly valid school of magic. You're about to prove her right. You're about to learn the Guardian Circle. The journey through the arcane arts brings us to the end of the road. We have learned to guide our path, defend against dragonfire, summon weapons from thin air, manipulate the economy, and shatter the minds of our enemies. But every adventurer eventually finds themselves in a situation where tricks are not enough. You're deep in the bowels of Foralhost or perhaps the final gauntlet of Skuldafn. You have no potions left. Your magicka is dry. Your health is flashing red. The Draugr Deathlords are closing in, their ebony weapons raised, their shouts shaking the dust from the ceiling. There is no place to hide. There is no way to run. You have to make a stand. You return to the College of Winterhold one last time to visit Colette Morantz. For your entire career, she has been the punchline of the faculty, more nervously insisting that restoration is a perfectly valid school of magic, while the destruction mages blew things up. You probably laughed at her, but now, having mastered the school, she offers you the final argument in her defense. She sells you the tome for the master-level spell Guardian Circle. To cast a master-level spell in Skyrim is a commitment. Unlike the quick snap of a lesser ward or the fluid motion of a fireball, Guardian Circle requires a ritual. The Dragonborn cannot move. You must holster your weapons. You raise both hands high above your head, weaving a complex rhythmic pattern of golden light. It takes 3 full seconds, an eternity in combat. During this time, you are vulnerable. If an enemy bashes you, the spell fails. If you run out of magicka mid-cast, it fails. You have to find the eye of the storm, the singular moment of calm amidst the chaos, and trust that you will survive long enough to finish the incantation. And when you do, the payoff is spectacular. The Dragonborn slams their hands down, and the ground erupts. A massive, glowing ring of golden runes expands outward, consecrating the very earth beneath your boots. The effects of Guardian Circle are threefold, creating the ultimate Paladin's last stand. First, it heals you for 20 health per second while you stand inside it. This is a massive amount of regeneration, effectively negating the damage from all but the heaviest attacks. Second, it acts as a terrifying barrier for the undead. Any Draugr, skeleton or vampire up to level 35, higher with perks that tries to enter the circle is instantly turned. They flee in terror, their AI overwhelmed by the sheer holiness of the ground. They run into walls, cower in corners and cover their faces, unable to look at you. You have created a sanctuary of light in the heart of darkness. But the third effect, the one that makes this spell actually amazing and creates our final core in-game fact, is the unintentional synergy with the Atronach mechanic. We discussed this briefly with wards, but here it is game-breaking. If the Dragonborn has the Atronach stone active, 50% spell absorption, and the Atronach perk from the alteration tree, 30% spell absorption, they have an 80% chance to absorb any magic that hits them. The game engine codes the healing effect of Guardian Circle as a spell being cast on the player every single second. This means that 80% of the time, instead of just being healed, you're also absorbing the magicka cost of the spell from yourself. The result is a perpetual energy machine. You cast the circle, you stand in it, your magicka bar refills instantly and constantly. You effectively have infinite mana. You become a magical turret. You can stand in your golden fortress, dual casting Incinerate, Thunderbolt or Paralyze without ever worrying about running dry. You're healing, you're regenerating resources, and you're repelling the melee attackers. It is the closest you can get to God mode without opening the console command. This interaction transforms the Paladin archetype from a roleplay struggle into a powerhouse. Usually Paladins in Skyrim suffer from multiple attribute madness. They need health to tank, stamina to block/swing, and magicka to heal. They are stretched thin. Guardian Circle solves the resource economy. You don't need magicka regeneration gear because the circle is your battery. You can focus entirely on heavy armor and damage. There is a beautiful irony in the lore of this spell. The vigilance of Stendarr, those wandering monks who hunt Daedra and undead, are often mocked for being weak. Their hall is destroyed by vampires. They die easily in random encounters. Yet, the magic they revere, the magic of Stendarr's mercy, is theoretically strong enough to hold back an army. Guardian Circle implies that the vigilance failed not because their god was weak, but because they lacked the magicka pool to cast his greatest miracles. The Dragonborn succeeds where the Order failed. You become the true vigilant. The visual storytelling of the spell is profound. In the dark, blue-grey palette of a Nordic ruin, the Guardian Circle is a stark, warm contrast. The runes on the ground are intricate, glowing with a soft, pulsing light that illuminates the textures of the floor, the cracked stone, the bone dust. It feels safe. It is one of the few spells that changes the environment to be hospitable to the player. When you step out of it, you feel the cold return. When you step back in, the sound design, a low resonant hum like a choir holding a single note, washes over you. However, the master spell animation is a double-edged sword that sparks intense community debate. The mobile mage faction argues that standing still for 3 seconds is suicide on legendary difficulty. An arrow can kill you mid-cast. They prefer grand healing, which is faster, or just chugging potions. But the ritualist faction argues that the setup is part of the skill expression. You have to use a shout like Become Ethereal to buy yourself the time to cast it safely. You shout, Become Invincible, cast the master spell while ghostly, and materialize just as the circle forms. It is a combo move. It requires planning. There is also the Necromage Vampire interaction again. If you are a vampire with the Necromage perk, Guardian Circle lasts 50% longer and heals 50% more. This is because the game treats you as the undead target, and since the spell is restoration, it buffs the effect. This leads to the hilarious contradiction of a vampire, a creature of the night, using the holiest spell in the game to become immortal. It's a law-breaking mechanical exploit that feels incredibly Elder Scrolls. You are bending the rules of divinity to serve your unholy existence, and let's not forget the sheer utility of leveling, because Guardian Circle casts a high-value spell on you every second. Standing in it levels the restoration skill incredibly fast. If you have infinite magicka from the Atronach glitch, you can just cast it repeatedly. It is the ultimate training montage. You stand in the Courtyard of Solitude, spamming holy circles while the guards watch in confusion. Is he blessing the pavement? Yes. Yes, I am. And I am becoming a god while doing it. The spell also has a psychological effect on the player. When you are low on health, you panic, you backpedal, your aim gets worse. Guardian Circle removes the panic. It gives you a home base. As long as you stand your ground, you are winning. It encourages a brave, defiant playstyle. You don't retreat, you entrench. But the most satisfying moment comes when you use it against the hardest boss in the Dawnguard DLC, Harkon. The Vampire Lord teleports around the room, summoning gargoyles and draining your life. The room is dark, filled with blood magic. You cast Guardian Circle in the centre of the chamber. Suddenly you control the centre. The gargoyles can't touch you. Harkon's drain spell is out-healed by the circle's regeneration. You stand there, bathed in gold light, an immovable object against an unstoppable force. It is the climactic battle the game deserves. As the Dragonborn stands in the circle, the last Draugr Deathlord flees into the shadows, terrified of the light. The magicka bar is full, the health bar is full, the stamina bar is regenerating thanks to the respite perk. The dungeon is silent save for the hum of the spell. The journey is complete. We have walked the path of the overlooked. We have taken the useless spells, the clairvoyance of the lost, the ward of the novice, the convection of the mad scientist, and we have forged them into an arsenal worthy of a legend. We have proven that power in Skyrim isn't just about the biggest number or the sharpest sword. It is about knowledge. It is about understanding the rules of the world so well that you can bend them, break them, and rewrite them to your advantage. You're no longer just a warrior or a mage. You're a master of the arcane nuances. You're the one who sees the path, who turns iron to gold, who walks through fire, and who stands in the light when the darkness comes. And so the magicka fades from our fingertips. The golden light of the Guardian Circle dims, retreating into the stone floor of the ruin until only the faintest warmth remains. The shouts of the Draugr have fallen silent, returning to the dust from which they came. The Dragonborn, weary but triumphant, sheathe their weapon, perhaps a bound sword dissipating into purple mist, or a steel blade returning to its leather home with a soft final scuff. The dungeon, once a place of terror and noise, settles back into its ancient slumber. The air is still. The only sound is the rhythmic dripping of water somewhere deep in the earth, a slow, hypnotic metronome counting down the moments until rest. You step out into the night air of Skyrim. The sky is a vast open canvas of indigo and violet, scattered with the diamond dust of stars. The moons, Massa and Secunda, hang heavy and watchful, casting a silver glow over the snow-capped peaks. You find a place to camp, perhaps a sheltered alcove near a stream, or the warm hearth of a roadside inn where the fire crackles with a gentle inviting pop. You unbuckle your armour, letting the heavy plates slide from your shoulders. The weight of the world, the weight of the quest, and the weight of the day lifts with them. You are safe here. You have mastered the hidden arts. You have turned the overlooked into the essential, and in doing so you have found a quiet power that needs no shouting. Close your eyes now. Let the knowledge of these spells settle in your mind like a comforting blanket. The fires of the forge have cooled, the spirits have returned to the void, the world is at peace, and so are you. Breathe in the cool, crisp air. Breathe out the tension. Drift away from the frozen north, away from the battles, and float gently into the dark, velvety embrace of sleep. Sweet dreams.